Keep watching. Just ahead, we'll hear from voters. Houstonians can easily vote with nearby location voting polls. We have Patience who will be covering University of Houston's efforts to make voting accessible for faculty, students, and staff. Go ahead, Patience.
21st to November 1st. In Harris County, there are over 700 voting polls, and during the early elections, there were 87 locations available. UH was one of them, which increased the voter turnout. For students with a busy schedule, having a voting location on campus allows them access to vote. Daniel Robles, a member of Next Gen America, agreed that a campus with a voting location took less time than other locations.
Well, specifically for the U of H polling location, it is generally like one of the smallest ones in terms of the lines. So you generally don't have to wait in line when you go to the U of H one because they keep things running really smooth.
Talking to students who voted in the Student Center, they explained why they believe it's important for those who didn't vote to vote in the upcoming elections.
Kind of like college students are the younger generation, so to say. So having a polling on campus that ensures that the younger generation, the upcoming generation, has their voice heard.
Like Josh said, it being we're a demographic, and what I think a lot of people don't realize is that it does impact us. It does impact our generation, the things that we're voting for. So having the opportunity and having access to it is, I mean, the most important thing. So, I mean, definitely important to have a polling place on campus where kids can go and, make their voices heard so that we can make the kind of, changes in our government that, we'd like to see for the next generation.
Thank you, Patience, for talking us through how accessible U of H was this election. Stay with us to keep close attention to this race that we will be showing you guys everything from federal to local. Here we are tossing a C-SPAN.
Performing better than Trump at. So we're probably seeing however the presidential race goes, that's how the Senate race is going to go in Michigan as well as Pennsylvania.
What about Wisconsin?
Now, Wisconsin is a really interesting race here where it's a very localized race. Again, Eric Hovde, a wealthy businessman, a banker who ran for the Senate there about a decade or so ago, is facing Senator Tammy Baldwin. Now, it's a big lift for Republicans right now. That was one of the races that was getting away for them a little bit in the summer. We saw that Tammy Baldwin was outspending and out fundraising Hovde on the airwaves. But in the closing weeks, as the presidential race has gotten incredibly close, the Senate race has gotten incredibly close. I know there's a common theme here in those presidential battlegrounds, but it's so rare for split ticket candidates to succeed. In fact, about only 3% of all senators represent a state that went the opposite way of how it went at the presidential level. So whoever wins the top of the ticket is that party is probably going to end up winning the Senate race there as well.
Is Texas really in play for a Senate seat for the Democrats?
Oh, Texas has been Democrats' white whale for years. I mean, they're really trying to evoke Beto O'Rourke's run in 2018 here. Now, Colin Allred, who's a representative from a former battleground district, he's the Democrat running there, former NFL player. He has outraised Ted Cruz actually every month this year. Ted Cruz has had to rely very heavily on his super PAC to come in and support him. Colin Allred is blanketing the airwaves. Again, because Texas is so big, so many expensive media markets, it's an incredibly expensive race for both candidates right now. In fact, over $2 billion has been spent on Senate races alone, not just in Texas, but across the entire battlefield. Now, when we were thinking about how competitive this race is, it's just going to be really, really tough for Colin Allred. Ted Cruz has done what he needs to do, at least this last year, to moderate his image a little bit, put a little distance between himself and former President Trump. It's going to be incredibly difficult for Colin Allred to overrun the top of the ticket. We're projecting that Trump will carry Texas by about maybe 3, 4, 5 points. If it's anything less than that, then Colin Allred has a chance. But it's probably Democrats' best pickup opportunity. Like we said, they're on defense in 23 seats. Republicans are on defense in 11. It's Democrats' best pickup opportunity, but that's not saying much right now when it's such an uphill climb.
And we will be back with Kirk Beto, editor-in-chief of the Hotline, in just a minute. Let's hear from Greta Brawner first.
Peter, we want to show you some early results in some states where the polls have closed. Now, throughout the evening, there may be mirages that happen in some of these states. Could be a red mirage or a blue mirage. We don't know until the total vote is in, and the Associated Press won't call these races until, not the total vote is in, but they won't call these races until they feel comfortable that who's ever trailing cannot catch the leader. And then at that point, they would put a check mark. We'll start with Virginia. Just show you again some early results here. The former president is leading 58.7 to 40.6. Right now, there's 0% of the vote in, 13 electors at stake. Now, here's where there could be a red mirage. The Washington Post reporting that in 2020, the former president led Joe Biden in this state for 5 hours after polls closed on election night before heavily Democratic area of Fairfax County reported almost 400,000 vote update. Biden won Virginia that year by a margin of 10 percentage points. Moving on to the state of Georgia, the Peach State. 16 electoral votes are at stake here. This is where it stands right now with just 3% of the vote in. The former president is leading 51.6 to 48%. Now, again, this is just early on. And the NBC reports that most counties will report their early in-person and mail ballots first in the state of Georgia, causing a blue mirage before the statewide results move toward Trump as Election Day votes are reported. After that, there may be a small shift back towards Democrats as the late arriving mail ballots are reported from large metro Atlanta counties. So beware as we talk about these early states with hardly any of the vote percentage in, and their competitive states, that you may see a mirage happening. We will keep you updated throughout the evening, and you yourself can do that. Get on your computer, have your laptop as you're watching here on C-SPAN, and go to cspan.org/results.
Evan McMorris Santoro of Notice. Greta talked about the 0% in Virginia, yet former President Trump is leading. Fairfax County, when I first moved out here, was the Republican firewall, and now it's a Democratic firewall.
That's right. This is the hardest part of the night, right? Because these things are just coming in. Everybody wants to know the answer, but we're going to have to wait for a long time. And as you're talking about, those suburban areas, that is where the Harris campaign has put a lot of effort. There are counties, we're talking about Georgia. There are counties in Georgia, that we're looking at. If you see Harris doing well in Union County in Georgia, you're going to be. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry. That's my own notes. Excuse me. We're talking about in Georgia. We're talking about Baldwin County in Georgia. That's a county where we would look and see if Trump did very well there, that you would see maybe he was flipping some of those voters that he was looking for. But it's so early, we just don't know any of this stuff yet. And so this focus that you're talking about this idea of where the vote has changed, where the campaigns have put their resources, and how the candidates are appealing to different states, it's very important, but we just don't know yet what to say about it.
Let's hear from DJ in Dayton, Arizona, a Trump supporter. DJ, when did you vote, and how was the process for you?
Well, it was a little bit chaotic. I voted yesterday.
Was it crowded?
Yeah. It's just getting worse.
What do you mean getting worse?
Well, I think in the last couple days it may be, for whoever it is to decide it, it's going to get chaotic maybe.
Why did you support President Trump in this election?
Mostly for the inflation prices and his views on abortion.
DJ, is Dayton, Arizona, is that in Maricopa County?
No, it's in Yuma County.
Yuma County. Thank you, sir, for calling in. We appreciate it. Evan McMorris Santoro, Maricopa County in Arizona is about 70% of the vote in Arizona.
That's right. I mean, this is a hugely important area for Democrats. They need to do very well in Maricopa County. They spend a lot of time, a lot of money there, a lot of effort there. It's a place where we really could see some of this shift that we've been talking about all night. It's also interesting what the caller mentioned about the idea of waiting a long time to vote, being online. This is another story of this election that is emerging so far, is people are having to wait a long time to cast their ballot.
Well, let's look at some of those Western Senate races. Kirk Beto, hotline. Let's go to Nevada.
Nevada is one that has come online really quickly in the closing weeks here. It looked like throughout the summer and early fall that the Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen had put this race away. Despite how close the race was getting at the presidential level, Sam Brown, the Republican there, was trailing pretty significantly behind Rosen. And unlike some of these other Senate candidates that we've been talking about on the Republican side, he doesn't have a source of independent wealth, at least at the same level as a Dave McCormick, Eric Hovde, or any of those other folks do. He struggled with fundraising. Jackie Rosen outraised and outspent him on the airwaves. In fact, Jackie Rosen bought a huge ad buy, about $14 million worth, the day after the Republican primary. He was able to get on air early and define Sam Brown as shifting his policy on abortion, as someone who had come from out of state. He had run in Texas before. But now in the closing weeks, Republicans have been really encouraged by a surge in early voting by GOP voters in Nevada. In fact, they've come in pretty heavily. The Senate leadership PAC invested some money in there. You saw Steve Daines, who's the chairman of the NRSC, the Senate Republicans campaign arm, go down there and campaign with Sam Brown. They're pretty bullish based on the early voting numbers here, but we'll have to wait for a few days for Nevada to sort out all its counting, because 80% of their election is done through the mail, and they're allowed to turn in ballots a few days after today. So we'll have to sit tight here on Nevada.
Kirk, is Arizona truly in play for the Republicans in the Senate?
Arizona has been one of Republicans' biggest hurdles this cycle. Again, going back to the top rankings of the Senate races that we thought were most likely to flip, Arizona is at the dead last of all the ones that we see as those presidential battlegrounds here. Kari Lake has a persistent problem with Republicans, frankly. People will remember her run for governor 2 years ago, where she insulted John McCain, the late senator, insulted his supporters as well, ran a very conservative campaign, actually praised a little some of the Civil War era abortion law in Arizona that was briefly on the books while she was running for governor. She's tried to moderate her position, but at the same time, as you saw throughout the last 2 years, she hasn't given up her false claim about election conspiracy theories in the gubernatorial and the presidential race in Arizona. Ruben Gallardo has been successful in kind of evolving from his more progressive roots as first a city councilman, then as a member of Congress from the Phoenix area, and really moderated his image with voters, really run to the right of President Biden on the border, even the right of Kamala Harris as well. And Kari Lake just really struggles.
In Georgia, only 3% of the vote has been calculated. Remember, the polls close at 7 p.m. It's still very early.
Yes, Amy, this is still very early on. This is the information that we did gather from C-SPAN, that Georgia has closed their polls half an hour ago. So these electoral votes and percentages are very prominent here in Georgia. Right now, Trump is leading at 51% and Kamala is leading at 48%. But, anything can happen since it's still very early on, right, Amy?
Yes. Trump currently has 19 electoral college votes, while Kamala only has 3 electoral college votes. Remember, it is 270 total electoral votes to win. We're going to check back into C-SPAN.
Will have to defend every single one of their seats and win the presidency if they want to keep their Senate majority. Montana is tough. Former President Trump carried that state by 16 points 4 years ago. John Tester, who's been doing his best to run as his own person, his own brand. He's a dirt farmer from Montana. He looks the part even. He's running against Republican Tim Sheehy. But there's a limit to how much gravity you can defy when just the partisan headwinds are so heavy right now.
We will be back with Kirk Beto throughout the evening. We're going to look at the House of Representatives shortly, but it is 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and more polls have closed. They've closed in North Carolina, which also has a gubernatorial race and a tight House race, Ohio, which also has a Senate race, and West Virginia, where they're electing a senator and a governor. Greta Bronner, what do you have for us?
We'll come back to those poll closings in a minute once we see some data populating there by the Associated Press. But Evan referenced this earlier, that it could be a very long night. We've got we have a competitive presidential race. We have some competitive Senate races. Take a look at Charlie Mathiasen, with Politico, who tweeted this out earlier and reminded all of us that here's when the Associated Press called the presidential election in years past. It was the Saturday following the election in 2020 when the presidential contest was called. It was the Wednesday after the election that the race was called in 2016. And you can see the previous cycles and the times for the previous 3 cycles before that. At the beginning of our night, Peter, you talked about the money being spent in these federal elections this time around, $16 billion total. From Open Secrets, they put this together. Outside spending, those are the outside groups, on 2024 federal elections has hit a record of $4.5 billion, with more than half of that spending coming from groups that do not fully disclose the source of their funding. A lot of money put into the presidential election by wealthy families. This is from the Americans for Tax Fairness. They put out this report in the closing days of the election. These are the billionaire families and which party they contributed to in 2024. You can see the first 6 families all contributed to Republicans. And then the Simons family that owns shopping malls, they're contributed to Democrats, along with the Bloomberg family giving $45.1 million to Democrats. Elon Musk, a name we've heard a lot, and how much he's contributed in this presidential cycle. He's third in that list, $133 million. Peter?
Let's hear from Andy, who's calling in from Michigan. He's a supporter of Kamala Harris. Andy, good evening. Why are you supporting the vice president?
Well, good evening to you, and glad you can take my call. A couple of things, and I'll just do them if I can without, I'm kind of upset about it. But anyway, food. If you think about what's going on with food, 5, 6 years ago, we'll just use Kroger's. They were paying their employees $8, $9, $10, maybe $12 an hour. Now you're paying them $15 to $18 an hour. So what do you think Kroger's is going to do with the price of food? They're either going to take the hit, they're going to lay people off, or they're going to raise prices. They're going to raise prices. Locally, crime. The presidents, neither one of them, have very little influence on crime locally. You can't tell the police how many people to arrest. You can't tell the prosecutors who to prosecute. And you can't tell the judges about how much sentences to give out. And the last thing that I just found out about the other day was soybeans, tariffs. The Japanese and the Chinese were buying soybeans from American farmers. When the tariffs hit, they started buying them from Brazil. Farmers are in trouble with that commodity. So I just don't think the presidents, either one, have a lot of control over a lot of things they're saying.
Hey, Andy.
And Americans are just...
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We got that point. Where in Michigan do you live?
I live in southeastern Michigan, suburb of Detroit.
Okay.
Oakland County.
Did you vote a straight Democratic ticket?
Yes.
And why Alyssa Slotkin? I know you talked about the nationalization of some of these issues, but why Alyssa Slotkin for Senate?
Because I think she's a better candidate than Rogers was.
All right, thank you. After this break, we will be covering you guys up with more from this election night. And we will also be possibly interviewing Next Generation Organization to get their thoughts on how this election night is going. And there is more to come.
See you after this break.
So there's nothing, the governor and the local people can handle that, but I don't see any input either president has over that. And when I started listening to these tariffs, we're in trouble. We're in big you-know-what with these tariffs, and I don't think Americans understand that.
Now, Andy, President Trump has spent a lot of time talking to the auto workers up there in Michigan. Both candidates have been up there quite a bit. What about the former president's message to the auto workers?
Well, again, I think some of them is misleading. If I remember right, he said something about jobs leaving Michigan, and I hope they beg for him to come back. He's not a union person. I mean, let's get real with that. Most Republicans are not, although they are affected by unions. Without unions, we wouldn't have the economy we have. We wouldn't have the middle class. So, some people hate LBJ. But just think if LBJ didn't get Medicaid and Medicare through, how a lot of it would be. Where would the Teamsters pension be if it wasn't for Democrats?
Andy, are you a union member?
No, I was a salary person. I started out as a union when I was in college. Then I got into management.
Thank you, Andy, for calling in. I'm going to have to leave it there. I appreciate it. Evan McMorris Santoro, what have you been hearing in our conversation with Greta and Kirk and Andy?
Well, we're hearing just this sort of conversation that we've been talking about, this economy focus that Andy was just bringing up, right? This has been such a huge part of this election conversation. I've been all over the country, talked to a lot of people, and I actually did a story a long time ago about inflation and what impact it might have. And we're seeing some of that sort of manifest itself in how everybody is really talking about this election. Andy talking about some of the frustrations Democrats have had with the way the economy has been discussed. They feel like maybe they're not getting a fair shake in the way that's being discussed. But this has really been a central issue. And I find it really fascinating to think about how strongly he has his views about this. And from Kirk, we're talking about this idea of this split ticket voting, which he mentions in Arizona is very possible there. But there is a chance that we see some of that other places as well. I traveled a lot around the country this year. I talked to a lot of folks, especially on this issue of when we're talking about this presidential race, where there were people who were planning to vote against Trump in a way. Like they didn't want to bring Trump back in, but they didn't consider themselves Democrats. And some of them would explain this to me by saying, look, I'm going to vote for the Republican for Senate. The Senate will prevent a Democratic President Harris from doing the sort of furthest things that she wants to do. We'll see how this manifests itself, but what Kirk is talking about when it comes to Arizona, it's something that I felt in my reporting around the country as I've been around all throughout the year.
Let's go back to Greta.
We have some wins to report in the state of West Virginia. The Associated Press has put the check mark next to the former president's name in the presidential contest. 4 electoral votes at stake. This is Trump country. In 2020, every county was red, but for one, and it was pink. Mr. Trump won by nearly 40 points. Moving on to the governor's race there. And the Associated Press has called Patrick Morrisey the victor tonight in that race, the Republican again winning that seat for the governor's race. It's left open because the very popular Governor Jim Justice ran for Senate this year. This is a pickup tonight for Republicans. It's been expected. In fact, the governor, Jim Justice, declared victory in October, saying that he was going to win this seat. And as we've talked about, Democrats have a thin majority, 51-49. With the check mark next to Jim Justice's name, it's 50-50 now. Peter?
Next call is Charles in Sydney, Ohio. Hi, Charles.
Hello.
Who did you support and why?
I supported Donald Trump. And the reason why is because he seems to be more with the common man. He has more reach with the normal, average, everyday person. He has lots of money, but, us people here on Main Street, we don't. And he's trying to help fix to where my family can afford food and fuel and still be able to do something fun on the weekend without having to go, what are we going to sacrifice? He's against the illegals coming in. He wants people to use the correct ports of entry, not put a ban on, immigration. This country was founded by immigrants. He's also for the Second Amendment, which coming from a farming community. A lot of us hunt. The man, because of the hatred, basically took a bullet for freedom. You have to say that is definitely to stay in the race, to keep going to the finish. I have to admire a man like that.
Hey,
who
Charles,
loves country.
I got to ask you, about two issues. Number one, the vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, is obviously from Ohio, and the issue of Springfield, Ohio, and immigration came up a lot in this campaign. Have you experienced an issue with immigration in Sydney, Ohio?
Yes, we have. There's several places here where the immigrants are, and it's turned our town somewhat unsafe in a few ways. But our law enforcement here with
I don't know how much time you have.
the sheriff's office and stuff,
I'm here till the election.
has done a real good job at keeping us, safe. And the
Also,
Springfield is quite a
in your
little
opinion,
distance from
how
us, so we don't have too much
influential
problems from them. Some of these companies are hiring them and different things. One of the things I was worried about is them being able to cast ballots for our elections, which, could turn an election.
Charles, very quickly, who'd you vote for in the Senate race?
I honestly left that one blank.
Between Sherrod Brown and Mr. Marino?
I voted for Marino for that one.
Oh, for that one
Sorry.
you left. Okay. All right.
I left the other out.
All right. Charles in Sydney, Ohio, thanks for calling in. Let's quickly hear from Will. Will's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Kamala Harris supporter.
Hello,
Hey, Will.
greetings. Yes, sir. Greetings. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
I live in Tulsa, which is kind of the blue bubble in a red state, and at least I hope so tonight. And my vote for Kamala Harris was more of a objection vote, or whatever you call it, a vote against Trump. I voted for Hillary Clinton, not a Hillary Clinton fan. But when I heard Trump's nonsense in 2015, 2016, I just couldn't vote for the man.
Do you consider yourself generally a Republican, Will, who does not like Donald Trump?
Yeah, but every one of us has conservative values on some issues. Every one of us has liberal or non-conservative values for some issues. So I think it's silly to vote for the party. I think it's much more important to vote for the person. I'm 62 years old. I voted for Reagan twice, and I voted for Obama twice. John McCain would have had my vote, except he brought on Sarah Palin, who I objected to. The reason he did is because the Republican Party thought Clinton was going to win the nomination, and she didn't. Obama won the nomination. So it's McCain would have got my vote, but I had to go with Obama because I vote for the person, not the party.
Thank you, Will, for calling in. Evan McMorris Santoro, what'd you hear from our last two callers?
Well, they mentioned Springfield, Ohio, where I actually traveled to. You mentioned Springfield, Ohio. I traveled to. I did some reporting there this year, and you're right. This immigration issue that was brought up by that caller, it's been so galvanizing for Republicans and for Trump supporters, specifically this year. But the Springfield moment was one of these issues that also kind of feeds into the second caller out of Tulsa, who a guy who says, I have conservative values, I voted both different directions before, I vote for the person. In Springfield, Ohio, you had a situation where you have a town controlled by Republicans, Republican county commissioners, Republicans in charge of the place, and the Republican nominee for vice president, starts talking about these migrants, these Haitian migrants who are there. We all remember the sort of things that were said about what those migrants were doing. And you had the Republican leadership of that area sort of pushing back against their own party's presidential nominee and vice presidential nominee, right? These are the kind of Republicans who were a little bit upset with the way that the Trump campaign was behaving towards that issue and towards the town, to be perfectly frank, from my visit there and from my reporting there. And so it's really, this is such a perfect two callers to have back to back, because this is what we're talking about. You have these Trump voters who really respect the guy, and they're very motivated by this immigration issue. And then you have these other folks who are maybe conservative, maybe can think of, have been Republican in the past, who just can't get on board with some of the rhetoric and some of the ways that Trump operates. And this could really end up being a huge part of how this election plays out. How many people we have like our caller from Tulsa, and how many we have like our caller from Ohio, right? This could be a huge, huge division.
Greta Bronner, what do you have for us?
Let's check in on the presidential contest in a few states. We'll start with Georgia. This is a battleground state, one of those swing states. This is where it stands at this point with 12% of the vote in. And you can see that the former president is leading there. Moving on to another swing state in North Carolina, 16 electoral votes at stake in North Carolina. Democrats haven't won North Carolina since Barack Obama did in 2008. This is where it stands right now. We will keep you updated on the race as the evening goes on. Moving on to the state of Virginia, want to show you where the race stands at this point in Virginia. For more than 3 decades, starting with Nixon, Virginia went to Republican candidates, but that flipped in 2008 with the election of Barack Obama. And Democrats have held it since then. Take a look at where it stands right now. And then in the presidential contest in Ohio, Ohio, former President Donald Trump won Ohio the last time around with 5% of the vote in. This is where it is right now. Let's also talk about this Senate race in Ohio, because this is one that will determine the balance of power in the Senate. Sherrod Brown seeking a 4th term. Bernie Moreno, a former car dealership and wealthy businessman, challenging him for this seat. Total spending in this race, $430 million. That includes the candidates and outside groups. This is an early bellwether for the Senate of who will control the upper chamber. Peter?
Well, Evan, Greta mentioned North Carolina. Now, I went to cspan.org/results. If you go there, you get this phenomenal national map with real-time results, and you can drill down to every state and get every county. Greta mentioned that Kamala Harris is winning 67% of the vote with percent in North Carolina. So I clicked on North Carolina, and when I did, I noticed all the votes are coming from Raleigh, which is your home territory.
Yeah, it's a pretty blue area of North Carolina. They should expect to do pretty well there. This is what's so challenging about the early parts of the night, right? It's like 2% in. We don't really know what it means yet. We have to see some of these other counties come in to start to get some understanding of what the national implications of a state like North Carolina might be. But yeah, if you're going to ask me, is the Raleigh Triangle area going to be good for Harris tonight? It is going to be good for Harris tonight.
And there is one House race up there that we need to talk about, which is District 1. It could be a bellwether county or a bellwether House race. It
is the remaining
Davis versus Buckout, I believe.
That's right. I mean, Kirk would have a lot more to say about this probably than me, but I'll say that this, it's the remaining swing sort of district in North Carolina. It's been a very gerrymandered state over the years, and this is a very important race to see if Democrats can hang on to this part of the, this district that they have access to actually winning.
Well, I know there's a lot going on your screen right now and a lot of information flying at you. I would highly recommend, and because I'm playing with this thing while we're talking, and which is not a good thing, but it's cspan.org/results.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back from the break. I'm here with Daniel from Next Generation, an organization. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so Next Gen America, what we do is voter registration nationally, primarily with young people. We just really want the young generation to register to vote and to go out to vote when election comes around. So we do it across the nation, and I'm here with the Texas branch.
All right, and how do you feel about how the election has been going on so far?
Yeah, so far we are seeing a lot more young people vote in Harris County specifically. That's where I do most of my work. And I do see that a lot more people have voted early in this election, and I think it's going pretty smoothly here at the poll at U of H. Lines are pretty short, so that's always a good thing. But yeah, I think it's going pretty smooth seeing all the people vote.
Early voting has been very impactful, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, how has young voter turnout affected the election?
So young voter turnout has caused a lot of shifts in the way or how many people vote because more people turn 18 every day. And because of the work that young orgs like we do, like Next Gen, Jolt, other orgs like MOVE, we primarily target young people to get them registered. So in that way, we're always getting new voters to come in and vote here at U of H or other campuses as well. So
first-time voters are so important. What is social media's influence in this campaign, both campaigns?
Yeah, so social media has had a pretty big impact on the way people view campaigns, whether they favor it or not. I know that NextGen has a very large social media presence where we do encourage people to reach out to any resources that might help them with finding their polling location and things like that. But we're always like making TikToks or something, making voting more
lighthearted.
Yeah, that's right, because it can be really stressful, but
Yes.
it really isn't. But we do try to get people engaged in civic engagement more than just like an offside thing.
It's more important to make sure they're having fun and not make it sound like such a duty.
That's right.
In your opinion, how influential has swing states been in this election?
Yeah, so swing states are pretty important in every single election. Definitely this election, we have to watch out for a couple of states to see where they might swing. There has been some talk about Texas becoming a swing state, but of course that is because of the work that we do and other orgs do, but we'll just have to see. But if something like that can happen, then it would make a pretty big impact in this election.
Thank you, Daniel. That's all from us here at Valenti. We're going to be hearing from our reporter, Jacob, at Kook TV.
Because of the work that we do and other orgs do, but we'll just have to see. But if
thank you,
like
Amy and Angelina, for the introduction. Grateful to be here for election night coverage with Kook TV and Valenti. Just wanted to talk about some campaign updates coming from the Kamala Harris and the Donald Trump campaign. In the past few weeks, actually, we've been seeing a really aggressive campaigning from both sides of the political aisle in a way that's been completely unprecedented in Texas history. Considering the fact that Texas has been a conservative bastion and bulwark for the past 30 or 40 years, there's just a lot of things that are happening, and excited to show what we got. In the past few weeks, actually, we've been seeing a really aggressive campaigning from both sides of the political aisle in a way that's been completely unprecedented in Texas history. Considering the fact that
for results in New York and California as well. But in Iowa, this is kind of a little bit more of a surprising race that's gotten on our radar in the last month or so ago. Now, everyone who's watching tonight probably read the J. Ann Seltzer poll.
Relied on voters to support their candidates up and down the ballot, cementing the state as a solid red fortress with its massive 40 electoral votes. Because of this, Democratic presidential nominees have typically avoided campaigning in Texas this close to an election, and for good reason. But on October 25th, Vice President Kamala Harris broke from decades of precedent and hosted a rally featuring dozens of prolific speakers and performers like Beyonce, Willie Nelson, and more in an effort to sway Houston's massive amount of urban voters. After news broke of Beyonce's surprise cameo, signups for this rally exceeded over 1 million voters, resulting in hour-long lines outside of the Shell Energy Stadium as early as 9 a.m. Here are some of the things that potential voters had to say.
Defending democracy is the most important issue for me.
We in Texas, we are tired of what has been going on, as well as the rest of the country. She knows that there is a chance for her to win Texas.
In the days that followed, we were allowed a sneak peek into the strategies at play from the chief of staff of the Harris County Democratic Party, and we got to ask him about this campaign's bullish tactics and what this rally could accomplish.
And I think there's a number of factors at play. One is if Harris is elected, she knows that she needs to have a Senate behind her, right, to really get the kind of policy that she wants to get done. One of the few races where the Democrats could actually have a pickup in the Senate is the Allred Cruz race, right? They need Colin Allred to win. Having a huge rally of this nature really puts the wind in the sails of the Allred campaign.
That same morning, Harris County Republicans teamed up with beloved Houston area philanthropist and furniture salesman Mattress Mac to host a pro-Trump counter rally at its Gallery Furniture store. Here, various speakers and elected officials laid into Biden's economic and immigration policies, casting Kamala Harris as a direct continuation of his agenda. The voters attending have their own things to say about this election.
Because that's what you see around us, your economy, world trade, wars and fights. All this getting worse. And the current vice president who's running for president has helped create this crisis.
I think that everybody needs to vote, whether you vote D or R. Get out there and exercise your right. That's what the country's all about.
Right now, we're seeing two major political parties flexing their resources and optimism in a way that hasn't been seen in Texas for decades. Republicans are well aware, and their well-funded machine is dedicated to bringing out voters faithful to Donald Trump, but also to voters who are still undecided in these final.
And Republicans are finally going to be put to the test as our votes come in. But whatever happens, everything that's happening right now is a surefire.
Republicans are well aware, and their well-funded
It's
machine
a surefire.
is dedicated to bringing out voters faithful to Donald Trump.
It is
but
a
also to
surefire
voters who
example
are
of what is
still
to come for the
undecided in
future of
these
Texas politics, as well as the time, money, investment, and resources that are going to be put onto our table from both sides of the political party. And now we're actually going to go to a break, so thank you.
Republicans are well aware, and their well-funded
It's a
machine is
surefire.
dedicated to bringing out voters faithful to Donald Trump.
It is
but
a
also to
surefire
voters who are
example of what is
still
to come for the.
Frontier Fiesta is a 3-day Western themed festival. We have all kinds of things throughout the 3 days, from a headlining concert.
We have a Ferris wheel, food, live music.
We have something for everybody. So the event is entirely planned and run by students.
Its focus is to really promote inclusion on campus and have a great time, as well as just really celebrate what it means to be UH Cougar.
It's not only for us students, but it's also for faculty, alumni, and the greater Houston community.
Frontier Fiesta is the longest standing programming tradition at the University of Houston. It started in 1939, and then by the 1960s it was called the greatest college show on earth by Life magazine. It really came to fruition in its current form in 1991. There's a lot of things that stay the same year over year, and sometimes we make some really big changes.
Frontier Fiesta has been important to me since I was in college. I was on the board as a chair. Years later, with Houston Tents and Events, we're the vendor that handles all the tents and infrastructure and tables and chairs. It is my way of still feeling involved with something. Now my focus and my goal is to try to take it to the next step, using Houston Tents and Events as a catalyst to improve the experience.
It takes a lot of dedication and hard work. On site, we have to carry a lot of things from the student center back to here. We also build a lot of murals and repaint murals.
What I was most looking forward to for Fiesta was the variety shows. They've always been my favorite part, and the energy is always insane in the tent.
I'm definitely excited for Juicy J.
I think the thing you're really looking forward to most this weekend is working with the students. They've put a lot of time, energy, and effort into this, and I'm really excited to see the look on their faces when it all pays off. They should be really proud of the work that they've done this year.
This event is a staple for University of Houston. It brings all the student body together. It brings alumni back for the cook-off portion. It is something that students are going to want to be a part of for a long time and ensure that it stays around and continues to flourish for many decades to come.
I believe in tradition. Keeping this going and being a part of something is definitely important, making something happen for all of us.
And then
You're starting, right?
welcome back to our coverage of Election Night 2024. Across the nation, voters have shown up to the polls, casted their ballot, and now all eyes are on the results that will ultimately shape the future of this country.
Just up ahead, we will continue to provide you with the down-to-minute updates. As the polls begin to close throughout the nation, will familiar faces hold on to power? It is all happening here in Valenti School of Communications. We've got you covered. Anything from federal to local, and we are going to introduce Priscilla. She is going to be talking about what her insight is on how next generation young voters, how important it is for them to submit their ballot and vote as well. Introduce Priscilla. She is going to be talking about what her insight is on
Can I glance off of this?
how next generation young voters, how important it is for that.
Good evening. My name is Priscilla Tarble. Tonight, we'll be diving into one of the key stories of this election, the impacts of young voters.
Thank you.
With the pressing issues like social justice and student loan debt, young voters have a significant role in shaping the future of our communities and our country. Let's take a closer look at what's motivating young people to go out there and vote and to make their voices heard. Thank you. The impacts of young voters. With the pressing issues like social justice and from pressing issues like racial injustices and student loan debt, today's youth are determined to make their voices heard. So now the question is, what's getting the younger generation to go out there and vote?
What motivated me to vote was the fact that this is my first year being legal, and also I think about all the people who came before me who fought really hard for Black people to have the opportunity to vote and have a voice in this country.
What really got me out to vote for this election cycle was just how hard both candidates campaigned this go round, and I've been exercising my right to vote since I was 18, and Kamala has really stood out to me as a great candidate just because of all of the things she's done on social media and in pop culture. Like just a few nights ago, she was on Saturday Night Live, which is one of my favorite shows that I watch with my mom. So I feel like these candidates are very relatable this go around, which sounds a little weird, but yeah.
Student loan debt is a very big problem that many has finally started to come to the front lines of, or at least reports of political figures, not just talking about it as nabbing a vote, but actually solving it after about 10 years of pushing, as college loans and the debt crisis have gotten completely out of hand over the last 10 years. So economics is a very big thing. Reports of political figures, not just talking about it as
that wraps up our segment on youth voter turnout. As we've seen, young people's issues are influencing election results. Stay tuned for more. Stay tuned for more updates, and remember, no matter your age, every vote counts. Thank you so much for watching, and let's go ahead back to Angela. As we've seen.
Thank you for focusing, Priscilla, on the importance of how important voters are and how eager they are to vote. Now we're going to be cutting to C-SPAN.
Yeah,
Tell us what you wanted to say tonight.
Taking the call. Yes, like I most definitely did vote for Ms. Harris.
Why'd you vote for Kamala Harris
this year? I could not. By the way, it's kind of breaking up. So if I'm breaking up, let me know.
Hey, Lee, just go ahead and tell us why you. Lee, just go ahead and tell us why you voted for Kamala Harris.
I did vote. I could not vote for Mike Garcia because of the action he took on the 6th with the other 140. I'd hate to see what would happen if our votes did not count. And that's tough to say as a lifetime Republican. So I did go with George Whiteside. I'm a little disappointed with the MAGA, or I should say my Republican Party, the MAGA, just non-MAGA over here. We just need to bring some dignity back to the office, some couth, some decor.
Thank you, Lee, for calling in. We appreciate that. Lee is not a MAGA fan, but he considers himself to be a Republican, and California's got some pretty important House races, doesn't it?
That's right. We talked about, Kirk was mentioning this as well. We talked about this idea of this is a place where some of these areas that had been gone blue, had been red for a long time, gone blue again. We've seen maybe a chance for Republicans to pick some of them up in California as part of they try to get their House majority, maintain their House majority into next year. It's interesting to hear him describe his feelings and how he approaches politics at this moment. It really is something I've heard so much out on the campaign trail, which is folks who, before President Biden dropped out and Vice President Harris took over as Democratic nominee, there was a lot of sort of exhaustion at the way, at this idea of this rematch between a kind of politics people didn't really like and a politician that they thought was maybe too old. And now with Harrison, we've seen some of that, this sort of, some of the more divisive aspects of MAGA really follow Trump around.
Greta Bronner.
Quick update for you, Peter. The state of Florida has been called for the former president. The Associated Press putting the red check next to his name tonight. 82% of the votes in there.
Supporter. Hi, Grant.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you?
Good, good.
What's on your mind?
I just generally think that, a big issue in this election is the Second Amendment. I know both of the candidates have made their minds very clear. Trump is, seemingly on the pro-Second Amendment side of everything, while Kamala Harris has clearly expressed that she wants to restrict that a lot. She's said she wants to ban assault weapons, high-capacity magazines and stuff like that. And there are many Americans like myself who own stuff like that and really care about that. So I think that's going to turn off a lot of rural voters who really care about something like that. That's sort of what's on my mind is my main issue. But, the economy as well, with just how inflation's been going and how that's been handled. I think that, Trump brings to the table some really good economic policy with, tariffs to foreign nations that want to compete with our goods and lowering taxes. So I think that could, drive a lot of people to vote on his side versus Harris. So.
Grant, have you supported President Trump in past elections?
I'm sorry, you're cutting out.
Grant, have you supported President Trump in past elections? I apologize. I'm not sure if we kept him on there or not, but it was a little difficult to hear him, and I apologize to you, Grant. Gary in Redding, California, Kamala Harris line. Hi.
Hello? Hello?
You know what? Is Gary there, please? You know what? Hey, a reminder. For some reason, I guess I'm cutting out because that's two viewers in a row who said they were having a little trouble hearing me. So I apologize to those viewers if you could not hear us correctly. Let's talk to Janet. Janet is in Springfield, Ohio, which obviously was in the news during this election cycle. Hi, Janet. All right, we're having just a bit of trouble here with the phones. I apologize. We'll get that taken care of. Evan McMorris Santoro, are you seeing anything, hearing anything surprising with what you're hearing from the callers and the results so far?
Well, the callers, I think, are very carefully considering these votes that they are casting. You talk about that Second Amendment issue that was just brought up. This is a hugely important issue to a lot of people. You saw Democrats actually trying to make a case that they actually have some Second Amendment credibility, and they would like to sort of win some of those voters back. He mentions rural voters. That's just one of the issues. You saw Vice President Harris talk about her own gun that she owns, her willingness to use it if an intruder were to get into her home. Difficult to imagine given where she currently lives and the security that's around it, but nevertheless, there has been a conversation among Democrats trying to do something about the Second Amendment issue. They are aware that they have a hard time with voters who that's their number one thing. So I've been quite fascinated to hear those, just how careful people are considering this stuff and how much they have been thinking about this election. Right, that's quite interesting. I will say that we have continued to hear us reporters have continued to hear from the Harris campaign that. We're waiting for all of these results to come in. We're waiting.
Coming up, we have a detailed explanation on how to vote. While the idea of voting can be overwhelming, especially for those first-time voters, the procedure is simple. Next up, we have Ricky, who will be breaking down the procedure of properly casting your vote for the president of the election. So here we are, Ricky. On how to vote. While the idea of voting can be overwhelming, especially for those first-time voters, the procedure is simple. Next up, we have Ricky.
At the top of the ballot, this is the big one. Former President Donald J. Trump versus Vice President Kamala Harris. Experts say the race will be a close one as they are racing to obtain those undecided voters. The second thing you'll see is the state race. Texas Senator Cruz and Representative Colin Allred. This is another race Texans are keeping a close eye on. Now let's get closer to home. You'll see local officials on the ballot like mayors, city council members, and school board officials. Local races often get less attention, but they impact daily life in big ways. Next, many ballots have propositions and referendums. These are issues the public directly votes on, like tax measures, infrastructure spending, or educational funding. Just like the HISD's Proposition A and B, that would cost $4.4 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B. If a new bond is passed, over $2 billion would go to rebuilding and renovating aging campuses, with $1.35 billion for safety upgrades. Finally, some ballots include judicial retention questions. These give voters the chance to decide whether certain judges stay in office. Once you know what's on the ballot, here's how to make sure your vote is counted. Review your ballot. Before heading to the polls, review a sample ballot if possible. Many counties post these online so you can prepare in advance. Step 2, marking your choices. When voting in person, most ballots use bubbles or check boxes. Fill in the bubble or mark the box fully. Without stray marks, if you're voting by mail, follow all directions precisely. Errors can lead to disqualification. Step 3, double check your selections before submitting. This is especially important if you're using a voting machine. Make sure each choice is correct and complete. And step 4, submit your ballot carefully. In person, it may mean feeding it into a secure scanner. For mail-in, be sure to follow signatures and dates. Now, if you don't live in Harris County, you can view your sample ballot at votetexas.gov. Reporting from the studios at KPRC, Ricky Munoz, Cook TV. Submit your ballot carefully.
Thank you so much, Ricky. We have so much more left to cover, so don't go anywhere.
Zone. It just isn't the sort of, it's not the similar organized structure. The Republican Party has their own system. Like They're out there too.
You know that TikTok baddie. I felt like that. Because I was like this, and she was like, go.
Did you hear? A massive sort of organized Democratic ground game they're hoping to rely on in this close race.
Thank you, guys.
Nancy is calling from Rotunda, West Florida. A Trump voter. Okay. Hi, Nancy.
I think we should still keep it in our ear, though. So
Hi, how are you doing? Thank you very much for your coverage tonight. I really enjoy C-SPAN.
Can you give me my
Nancy,
bag, please?
did you vote straight Republican?
Thank you so much.
Or were you a ticket splitter?
It's the other one. Yes, that one.
Yes, no, I'm straight Republican.
Why do you support President Trump?
I'm too anxious to. I think I throw up.
Security and the economy.
Have you seen?
Give me one too.
Where is Rotunda, West Florida?
I'll munch at it. Yeah. They say you're live. We're like.
South of Venice and north of Punta Gorda.
Okay. So you're on the Gulf side.
I'm gonna.
Yes.
Have you seen an Have you seen an impact from immigration?
Let's get situated. Like, wouldn't this be so fun? It was like makeup tutorials, like talking about like lighthearted stuff.
But throughout the country, I just believe our border should be secure.
This is serious.
And we should know who's entering the country.
Wait, I was thinking about
and I'm not against.
Go ahead.
I'm not against
she
immigration.
said you're on.
I just want it legal.
Thank you, ma'am, for calling in. Greta Bronner has more results.
Let's check in on some Midwest states, beginning with the state of Ohio. It releases its pre-election day votes first thing on election night, including mail-in votes. Like in other races since 2022, mail-in votes tended to lean toward Democrats. As the election day votes trickled in, though, in 2022, Then Republican Senate candidate J.D. Vance took the lead, and he eventually won in the state of Ohio. This is where it stands right now, with the vice president having a slight lead with 34% of the vote in. Moving on to Michigan, one of those 7 battleground states. 15 electoral votes at stake here. There's 2% of the vote in. We could see a slight red mirage in Michigan as smaller, more pro-Republican localities report their votes. You can see, though, here it's looking not that way. There's only 2% of the vote in. So we'll see what happens as the votes come in more in the state of Michigan. Right now, the vice president with a sizable lead, but only 2% of the vote in. Moving on to the state of Pennsylvania. And you can see here with 6% of the vote in, again, the vice president has the lead. This could be an early blue mirage. We just have to wait and see because mail-in votes are counted first, and then they get to in-person election day votes, and those are reported in Pennsylvania.
Well, Kirk Beto is the editor-in-chief at The Hotline, and he is back with us to talk about some of those House races in Pennsylvania. Kirk, can we start in Pennsylvania 7? Have we seen anything yet to give us a trend?
We're still waiting on a little bit more returns in there. Again, Pennsylvania counts ballots very slowly. They're not allowed to pre-process early votes. So we're waiting a little bit longer to see some results in the Pennsylvania 7th district. But Susan Wild is kind of on the periphery of being one of the most competitive races in the country right now. It's a tough district for Democrats, but Wild has proven time and time again that she has a lot of resilience. She fundraises really well. She's out fundraised and outspent her Republican opponent. You know, stop me if you've heard this before, but Democrats have a great cash advantage all across the map, and it's been keeping their most vulnerable members a little bit, giving them a little bit more cushion, and like we said earlier, pushing Republicans back on defense in a lot of those reach seats. So we're still waiting on more data right now out of Pennsylvania.
And what about Pennsylvania 8? What should we be watching there?
Pennsylvania 8 is going to be probably one of the most competitive races in the country. It's in the top 20 races that we identified as most likely to flip. Rep. Matt Cartwright represents the Scranton area, and it's one of the 5 districts represented by a Democrat that voted for former President Trump. Those, as we said earlier, those split ticket races are always the toughest. In fact, less than about 3% of all House districts in the country are crossover members. This has been one of the top offensive targets for Republicans almost every cycle for the last 4 years or so, or since Pennsylvania redrew their lines in 2018. But again, Cartwright has dominated the airwaves. This is an area where Democrats are a little bit more worried about, though, because Harris has struggled in areas like Scranton in ways that that President Biden, who was jokingly called the 3rd senator from Pennsylvania, performed really well, and Harris is not matching those numbers right now. So that's going to be one of our top races to watch here in the coming hours, if not a few days, depending on how long it takes Pennsylvania to count its votes.
Kirk Beto, there's a 3rd Democratic incumbent seat that is competitive, and this is up in Maine.
Yes, it's the Maine district, Jared Golden. That is another one of those 5 seats that's represented by a Democrat that Trump carried. Now, Jared Golden is in kind of the race for his life right now. He flipped the seat in 2018, kept it in 2022, and he is really having the race for his life right now. The last polls that we saw here found him tied with his Republican opponent. Now, this has been, again, another top priority for Republicans. If Republicans want to keep and maybe even expand their majority, they're going to need to win Maine 2 right now. And again, because Maine splits its congressional votes, this is an area where Trump won, like we said, and it's going to be difficult for Jared Golden. Coming into Election Day, this is probably one of his worst polls of the last 4 cycles. If it's tied in there, the tie almost has to go to the runner, which in this case is the Republican, because Trump's going to probably end up carrying this district.
Hey, Kirk Beto, I know we don't have it listed for you, but in the Harrisburg area of Pennsylvania, Scott Perry, there's been some rumor that he is in trouble. Freedom Caucus member, Republican.
Yes, there is actually, and this is one of the ones that Democrats have just been so frustrated by for the last few cycles, because they see a guy like Scott Perry, a member of the House Freedom Caucus, like you said, who goes around saying, I didn't come here in Washington to make friends here. A guy who's been a little bit out of step with what we were seeing, the bluing of the Harrisburg area as more college-educated folks come live and stay in and around that area of the country. Now, the diploma divide has been kind of the story of politics in the Trump era, that if the higher education level you have, the more likely you are to vote for a Democrat. And this is one of those areas that has frustrated Democrats because they see an influx of more highly educated voters move into the Harrisburg area, but they haven't been able to knock off Scott Perry. But they think that with Janelle Stelson, who was a former longtime TV anchor in the district, that they can finally get Perry here. This is one of those rare instances where January 6th and threats about democracy have trickled down to House races. Evan said earlier really well that we haven't really seen Democrats lean into that message as much. It's been more about the economy and abortion access. This is one of those areas where the Democrat in a House race is really leaning into that because of Scott Perry's involvement with the Stop the Steal movement.
Well, Greta Bronner and I will be here until 3 a.m. this morning, and let's check in with Greta right now.
Let's dig into some competitive Senate races beginning in Ohio. As we said before, Republicans are eyeing this seat held by Senator Sherrod Brown, the Democrat there. He wants a fourth term. Bernie Moreno's trying to stop him. 30% of the vote in. Look how tight this is. This is a potential pickup for Republicans to flip the upper chamber. Moving on to Pennsylvania, another tight race we're expecting here. But right now, with 7% of the vote in, look at Senator Bob Casey's lead. Again, this is only 7% of the votes are in. And as we said, Pennsylvania, they report the earliest reported votes to be dominated by mail ballots, so this could cause an early blue mirage. We're going to keep you updated on that competitive Senate race in Pennsylvania. And then moving on to Michigan. This is another battleground state with a competitive Senate race in it as well. Alyssa Slotkin is eyeing this seat, once held by the Democrat Debbie Stabenow, who decided to retire and not go for another term. The Republican challenger here is Mike Rogers, Republican, former FBI agent, former member of Congress. Outside spending by this group and candidate spending totaled $205 million. Peter?
Evan McMorris Santoro, every time Greta mentions a state, I go to our cspan.org/results and I'll drill down into the counties in that state, and I'm paying no attention to what I'm doing here, so I apologize for that. But let's take Pennsylvania for an example. She showed the big lead that Bob Casey has. I went onto the map, I clicked on Pennsylvania, and you can see that the votes that have come in so far are from Pittsburgh and Philadelphia.
Right, that's the blue, right in the middle, that's Pennsylvania. But the thunderclap that you hear right now is the fact that we're talking about Pennsylvania results, okay? All year we have been waiting to see what happens in Pennsylvania, and now we are seeing votes actually come in. This is a very big deal. This is like the biggest deal for people who've been following this election. It'll be a long time till we know, and as you mentioned, I think it's really smart for people to remember this, that when these votes are ticking in, it doesn't really matter till we know what they all are, right? That's where those AP calls are based on a lot of things. People who are following a lot of other things. Wait till that before you make any conclusions based on what you're looking at with these numbers coming in. But the fact that we're talking about Pennsylvania and we're talking about Michigan now, we are really in the meat of this election now. These are the states that are extremely important to deciding who the next president is going to be, right? It's been fascinating to sit here with you and talk with the callers and watch this whole place come in, because I think about the rest of the country where there's so much election going on that people are going to the polls, they're showing up, Connecticut, whatever, Rhode Island, whatever, but we are really in the thing now that will decide it. And so it's like exciting for me personally to start to see it come in, but also this is the moment where we really have to be very careful when we talk about results, because we just don't know what they mean yet.
Yeah, and I need to put this away because I'm spending all my time over here and not paying attention
I
to
think you're
anything
doing a great
else,
job.
So I apologize to everybody for that. Laura is up in Douglas, Alaska, a Harris supporter. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Where is Douglas, Alaska? Are you close to Anchorage?
Nope, Juneau. I'm in the southeast Alaska. It's a little island right off of Juneau, Alaska.
All right. So what was the voting experience for you up there in a ranked choice voting state?
Easy peasy. They actually had a lot of pamphlets that came out, a lot of information. I got a text message a few days ago about where my polling place was going to be. It was actually pretty nice. And the ranked choice voting was a different experience. I was born and raised in upstate New York, actually, so this is the first time I've done a ranked choice voting, especially in a presidential election, but it wasn't that complicated. They had a lot of information out there about how that works and what to do and exactly how to fill out your form to make sure that each ranked choice was counted.
Now, Laura, you couldn't rank choice on the presidential level, could you? It's just on the state level.
No, you could do it on the presidential level.
Okay. Did you rank choice, or did you just mark Kamala Harris on your ballot?
Nope. I just marked Kamala Harris on the ballot, one and only.
But you could have ranked Kamala Harris and Donald Trump as your second choice?
I could have, but I never would have.
Right. I understand. What about Mary Peltola? Because there's some talk that she might be in a little bit of trouble because the Republicans have kind of grouped together up there.
Yeah, I voted for Mary Peltola. She's done a great job. She's she's pro-choice. She's pro-job. She's pro-family. She's got kids in the Coast Guard here, and so she's very pro-Alaska, pro-fishing, pro-hunting, all of that kind of stuff. So I voted for Mary. I hope that is where we're headed still. She's done a great job, and I hope she can continue that, but we'll see.
Did you put a second choice after Congresswoman Peltola?
I did not. I voted for Mary Peltola straight through.
And I got to ask you, is there a lot of sign of a presidential campaign up in Alaska right now? Just because of the remoteness?
I've seen two Trump signs, and that's it. Again, coming from upstate New York. That is shocking, where people talk about politics all the time. Here, it is not a conversation. People don't have signs in their yard. We don't talk about it. I have no idea who my neighbors and that kind of stuff are voting for. We just vote and move on with our way because, like you said, we have small populations and small communities, so we got to live together.
Thank you, ma'am, for calling in. Do you live in Alaska year-round?
Yes, I do.
What do you do?
I work for the Forest Service.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Evan, that ranked choice voting, is it working as far as voters? Do voters like it? It's on the ballot in a couple of different states, isn't it?
Yeah, I think also here in D.C., right? People who had voted on ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
It is one of these reform issues that the reason for it is the idea of ranked choice voting is that it lets people vote for maybe some of those other, third-party candidates or candidates that might not do as well that they would normally not want to vote for, right? This idea of I don't want to throw my vote away, but in this case, you could go in and mark down a different kind of candidate. I know that the parties have not been thrilled with it. I mean, voters have passed it in several, places and added it to their ballots in several places. But we've seen the parties sort of organize, both sides sort of organize against it, not really liking it. Because the idea is it really is supposed to create a way to kind of break the control of just the two parties, right? Gives other people a chance to maybe be a part of things. Some places, Alaska specifically, we've seen some pushback against ranked choice voting because of some of the results that have come out of there. We've seen Republicans be not happy with having this system anymore and maybe talking about reforming it. And other places that are voting on it, we've seen those arguments, again, from both sides about what to do. I don't know. I mean, I have not talked to a lot of voters about the experience of voting on ranked choice voting. I will say I've talked to a lot of voters about the desire to be able to cast votes outside of the two-party system. I mean, you hear this all the time when you go out in the world. Why is there only two? Why can't I think of something else? Why can't I vote for something else? And of course you can, but people know that if they do, it doesn't really have much impact. This is a chance maybe to give it some impact, So, again, without having to spoke to people about the actual sort of like process of it, it does speak to a desire that a lot of voters have that I have found on the road.
Well, 1 a.m. Eastern Time is when the polls close in Alaska, and so we'll get an update on Mary Peltola's race at that point. But it is 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. The polls have closed in Arkansas. It's the only state that closes at 8:30. Let's return to Greta Bronner and see what she has for us.
Let's check in on the state of New Hampshire, starting with the presidential race there. In the closing days of this campaign, we saw the race tighten in New Hampshire, and even the running mate of the former president, J.D. Vance, heading to Derry, New Hampshire, holding a rally there over the weekend with just days to go before the election. And this is the way where it stands right now with 19% of the vote in. You can see that the vice president leading there now. We'll continue to check in on New Hampshire to see if the polls were correct and this tightens up. 4 electoral college votes at stake there. And then we want to show you a competitive House race in the state of New Hampshire. Annie Kuster, the Democrat, retired from this seat, decided not to seek another term, retired after 6 terms. You can see the Democrat there in this contest leading by about 20 percentage points right now with 19% of the vote in. Peter?
Let's return to calls. We want to hear your voices throughout the evening, and Bill is in Goodwin, North Carolina. Bill, good evening to you.
Good evening. My name is Bill, but my real name is Garrett. Bill's my nickname, but yes, I voted for Donald Trump. I think this country is going downhill with the recent work of Kamala and Joe. I really think we need somebody to really fix the issues, especially in my state, with all the work and stuff that's going on.
Hey, Bill, where is Godwin, North Carolina?
It is close to Fayetteville in Raleigh.
Okay, near Raleigh.
Yeah, kind of like 30 or 40 miles away from Raleigh. It's close to Fayetteville.
Has it been an active campaign season in North Carolina?
Yes, it has. I've seen a lot of signs for both Trump, Harris, and then the different governors and senates. It's been a real active race. Like, this is my first year to vote, and I just got my ID a couple of weeks ago, so I was pretty excited to vote.
Well, congratulations. Did you vote for the Republican nominee for governor in North Carolina, Mark Robinson?
I did not. I think he wouldn't do as good of a job as Josh Stein. So I voted for Josh Stein.
Bill, what do you do for a living?
Well, I'm unemployed. I'm only 18, but right now I've been helping like my family and neighbors, trying to be a good neighbor.
We really appreciate you calling in. We appreciate you being with us on election night here on C-SPAN. Evan McMorris Santoro, we haven't really mentioned the governor's race in North Carolina yet.
Not one of those ticket-splitting opportunities, really. Mark Robinson, as you mentioned, he was a kind of a big deal. He's a sitting lieutenant governor of the state. A big deal when he got the nomination. He spoke at the RNC convention over the summer, and then he sort of suffered a cavalcade of scandals sort of towards the end of the campaign that has now shifted things away. The National Party pulled their money out. A lot of his staff quit. This is not a person that people are expecting to do very well tonight, even though it's a state that's very competitive and that Trump could easily win. It's interesting to hear the caller. He sort of embodies 2 separate things about this. One, this Stein, voting for Stein and the Republican as well, but also this idea of these young men voters showing, these younger voters, first-time voters coming out. This is something that both campaigns have worked really hard to get their hands on. Trump has really wanted a lot of them to come out. So people casting their first ballot. Also, I just try to think about, could there be a more different experience in this election than being in a swing state like North Carolina versus that woman in Alaska who, she's seeing no signs, she's seeing no ads. People in North Carolina are seeing a lot of ads and a lot of signs, and I bet a lot of them would like to be in Alaska right now.
Well, let's talk to Ben in Champaign, Illinois, a Harris supporter. Hi, Ben.
Hi, how's it going?
How are you?
So I'm doing well. I voted for Harris a couple days ago via mail, and I'm very excited for this election. About to go watch the rest of it with a couple of my friends.
Now, Ben, the mail-in process in Illinois, easy?
Very easy. Just got the ballot, checked out my judges to see which ones are the good ones, which ones are the bad ones, and got it done in 15 minutes.
Are you associated with the university there in Champaign?
Yeah, I'm currently a law student, so I'm going with a bunch of my friends tonight.
Do you see any evidence, being in a university town in Illinois, of Trump supporters?
I drive around my town every once in a while. I think I've seen one or two Trump signs around here, so really not too much, honestly.
But overwhelmingly Kamala Harris?
Yeah, I'd say like 20-1 on the signs or so. Pretty blue area, I think.
Is your governor popular down there in Champaign, J.B. Pritzker?
I don't know. I'm originally from up north in Chicago, and he's very popular up there. But around here, I think so. I think JB's been really well liked. He's a very strong overall.
Ben, thanks for watching. Thanks for checking in with us. We appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a great night, everyone.
Greta Bronner has more results.
More states have been called by the Associated Press. Let's start with the state of Arkansas. Tonight, 9% of the vote in, and you can see that the vice president is leading there, but the Associated Press is calling this for the former president. He's won this state before, and the Associated Press feels there's no way that the vice president can win the state of Arkansas, so they've put the check next to his name. Moving on to the state of New Jersey, and this one has also been called tonight for the vice president with 28% of the vote in. Those percentages will change as more of the votes come in, but again, the Associated Press feels confident in their call with the thousands of people that they have working tonight at the Associated Press. Looking at all the data that's coming in, they feel confident to call this for the vice president. And then another race in Delaware. This one has been called as well tonight for the vice president. She is declared the victor with 43% of the vote in. And finally, let's go to the state of Kansas tonight. We're watching this state right now to see what happens. 8% of the vote in, and you can see it's tight. If you go to our map on cspan.org/results and you look at where the votes are coming in, you can see large amounts of the votes coming in Kansas City and Topeka at this point in the night, and that is why the race looks tight in the state of Kansas. Peter?
Evan, I wanted to ask you about Kansas while Greta has that pulled up. There was a little bit of a feint toward Kansas saying, hey, this is in single digits, it's tight. And then, of course, we saw the Iowa. Was this purposeful? Was this outlier polls?
I feel like we're having like a brain melt here, because I was about to bring up that, one of the biggest moments of the last week of this campaign was this Ann Seltzer poll in Iowa, which showed that, Kamala Harris up by 3 points, huge swing, very surprising. A place like Kansas could show us, again, it's very early, results are very early, we don't know what these results say yet, but a place like Kansas could show us if that Seltzer poll is a real thing, and if it is a real thing that's like farther out into the Midwest, just besides Iowa, right? Kansas is a place that, like Iowa, a lot of people, when they talk about that Iowa poll, they're thinking that the very restrictive abortion law that's now in effect in Iowa could have had an effect on some polling there, right? And on the way voters feel. Obviously, Kansas is a place where it was one of the earliest places that we learned kind of what a liability Dobbs could be for Republicans when in a special election in Kansas, not a place we think about for Democrats doing very well or the left doing very well or anything like that. They won a special election about abortion rights there. So this is a place where, again, we're waiting for these numbers to come in, see what they are. But that Seltzer poll question, which is a big question for those of us who watch this stuff, how accurate is that poll? Is that the right poll, or is every other poll the right poll? That is a state where we can maybe see some answers to that.
And to go back to Kansas, didn't Kansas already have a referendum on the issue of abortion and reproductive rights?
That's right, and that's what I was saying. Is that it was one of the early ones in the post-Dobbs world, the special election that sort of fueled this idea that this is a very dangerous political liability for Republicans. It's a very tough one for them to overcome. That was one of the states where we saw that conversation. But of course, it has now been dealt with, so maybe it won't be as motivating. But I'm just saying, this idea of what the Seltzer poll is supposed to be showing us is that maybe there is places in the Midwest that things might look a little different. Again, we don't know yet, but that's sort of what that's what we're looking for in places like that.
Well, in 20 minutes, a couple of the swing states polls close, Arizona and Michigan. I wanted to ask you, we're already getting results from Michigan. How is that possible? The polls haven't even closed there. Well, is it probably the mail-in votes that they've started counting?
That is right. Some of these are, we talked about how long it has taken. Greta showed that thing earlier about how late it has been some nights before we get these results in. Nights, I mean like days, But a lot of states have changed their laws around this. We feel like, for example, in Georgia, they're counting their mail-in votes and their early votes like much quicker now in an attempt to try.
Welcome to the Valenti School of Communications and the Cook TV Live 2020-24 live coverage of presidential election night.
It is going to be an electrifying night. Stick with us to hear stories focusing on different topics. This 4-hour event will cover everything from federal to local elections, so you don't want to miss it. What we have heard in Texas, Colin Allred is leading by 2,500 votes. 38% of the vote has been counted, and he is leading in that state.
That's right, Amy. Colin Allred is taking the state, but I've heard just by barely. 2,500 is still a low vote, but we are still in very early voting time period. So we don't know what to expect. So we're expecting a lot more votes on each party.
It's currently in Pennsylvania. Harris is winning. She has 71 Electoral College votes, while Trump has 27 votes. This is important because this is one of the swing states in the election. Whoever wins this state is very important.
Of course, Amy. And also, Harris is leading in North Carolina. Right now in the electoral votes in North Carolina, Trump is leading by 95 Trump, and Kamala is is behind Trump 35% in Electoral College votes. So that is a very large stretch from Trump to Kamala on the votes, but still it's very early on, so we don't know what to expect. We're expecting a lot more votes to come in, and now that voter registration polls are now closing, the voter polls and the voters are now getting their voices heard little by little.
Remember, it is 270 votes to win the entire election. It is still very early to tell, but keep with us while the results roll in. You can go ahead and see from C-SPAN.
Project 2025. I mean, the issues just goes on and on and on. Not to mention his character, his morals. Who would trust her daughter or wife to be left alone in the room with Donald Trump?
That's Don in Sandston, Virginia. Greta Bronner, what do you have for us?
We have another call tonight by the Associated Press in the state of Illinois. The Associated Press calling this race tonight for the vice president. 9% of the votes in. So those 19 electoral votes will go in her column. Peter?
Richmond, Virginia. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Who's your candidate of choice?
I voted for Claudia de la Cruz this election.
And who is Claudia de la Cruz?
She's a socialist. I supported her primarily because as a trans woman, I believe that neither of the candidates have my best interest at heart. And more than that, I cannot support a candidate who is directly complicit and responsible for a genocide in Gaza, Free Palestine. The United States is sending millions and millions of dollars to the Israeli government to kill women, children, and other innocent Palestinians all across Gaza.
Aaron, what do you say to your acquaintances and friends who say to you, you're wasting your vote on a third-party candidate?
I feel that, I live in a state that is predominantly going to be blue, so I don't feel that if I voted red, that would make a difference. I don't feel if I voted blue, that would make a difference. And I vote on what I believe is the correct humanitarian, harm reductive way to cast my vote.
Thank you, Aaron, for calling into C-SPAN. Evan McMorris Santoro of Notice, News of the United States, is here with us throughout the evening. What have you been hearing in our conversation now? I'm sorry I'm making you be the one who takes whatever Kirk and Greta and the callers all say. Go.
I'm enjoying it. I'm really having a great time. That last call was pretty fascinating. I was on the ground in Dearborn, Michigan, the night of the Democratic primary there, when we really saw the power of this Gaza movement that the caller referred to inside the Democratic Party. It was this group of people there, they called themselves uncommitted, because what they did is they voted, in Michigan there's an option on your ballot to vote uncommitted for your Democratic primary ballot, kind of like a none of the above. It was too late in the game to put a candidate on or to run somebody else, so they voted this uncommitted line to sort of show that there was a lot of people who were upset about what at that time Joe Biden's administration, what Joe Biden was doing, their feeling about Joe Biden about this issue. And we saw folks who thought they might make an impact of maybe a few thousand votes or a few tens of thousands, more than 100,000, very successful. They sent some delegates to the DNC, and this issue has continually dogged the Democrats throughout the entire election cycle. The passion you hear from that caller speaking about this issue is something that I heard a lot in Michigan at that time, and you still hear in parts of Michigan now. We heard Democrats maybe shifting some of their focus away from areas like Dearborn, where President Biden enjoyed great support in those places in 2020 because he was pushing back against some of the comments that President Trump had made, and their so-called Muslim ban, those kinds of things, very motivating for those communities. That motivation has been turned off in a lot of ways by this issue of Israeli policy towards Israel. And I saw that on the ground. I've seen it all played out. We're not sure how that's all going to end up tonight, but that passion has been something that's been a really important part of the Democratic race actually throughout. And it's just so interesting to hear how all that stuff manifests itself in that call. Another thing that was in that call was talking about transgender issues, right? This has been another previous caller mentioned that was one of the reasons that they supported President Trump, right? Because they had heard a lot of those, those ads. It's very important. The Trump campaign and the Republicans are running a ton of advertising about this issue, about trans rights, pushing back on them. And we've had some reporting at Notice that some transgender rights groups have felt the Democrats have not really done much to push back against that they've kind of maybe stepped away from an issue that maybe is not doing a lot for them electorally. This is, the result.
Hi, welcome back. We are now with Hatiti from Kook TV, and she is a political science major here at U of H. I'm going to be interviewing her and getting some thoughts from her as well on this election season and this election coverage for tonight. All right, so how are you?
I'm a little anxious.
You're a little anxious?
Yeah.
I believe so. I think every American or everyone here in this country is pretty anxious. So,
right.
I'm just going to ask you some questions. Give me your honest and truthful opinion. It
Yep.
can be anything short, long. Okay?
Gotcha.
All right, so what do you think are the most important issues in the 2024 election and why?
I think that currently the issues that are really on most Americans' minds when they casted their vote today was reproductive rights, the economy, immigration, the crisis at the border. Those are pretty much the essential issues that most voters, I would assume, have in their mind when casting their ballot. These issues are honestly, they have been ongoing, especially with the women's reproductive rights, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I think that a lot of women have came out and casted their ballot in favor of Kamala Harris due to this. I think that it's a personal issue that a lot of women have really spoken out about with protests and such. So yeah.
And on that Roe versus Wade that you just said, that you just mentioned, how important is to instill that law into today's time, now that we are very much past Roe versus Wade,
right.
And we are in such a modern time where there should be many more people on, people should be able to make their decisions. So how do you feel about Roe versus Wade getting canceled?
Right. So I think that it was very unnecessary. I think we all kind of saw it unravel when Donald Trump appointed the 3 Supreme Court justices that have the majority right now. I think that we first-handedly saw the process of really getting that overturning through the Supreme Court. So I think that that was a personal issue that a lot of women really took to heart, especially elderly women. I think that there was an overturn with elderly women, especially because, you know, they themselves had to protest when they were younger. So, so it was like, those are issues that have been ongoing for decades now. And to see like our country go backwards, it's heartbreaking, you know what I mean?
Yes. So, yeah. For sure. And also, how do you think social media played a part in this electoral season? Do you think that it was in favor of the candidates, or do you think that it kind of backfired the candidates and, you know, how people view them? And just give me your thoughts about that.
So there is a great significance with polarization in our country right now. I think that social media really became a thing in politics when Barack Obama, which was an unknown senator at the time, he beat Mitt Romney through the use of social media. And I think that a lot of politicians really took that and analyzed the strategic ways that he went about using social media. And that's really what has, you know, we saw it develop. And so like now, especially with Kamala Harris headquarters, I don't know if you guys have seen their TikToks, but they're amazing. They're very funny, but vice versa. Donald Trump's presence in social media, especially Twitter, I mean, X now, is very prevalent in today's world. And social media is really good at informing voters, but it's also very good at misinforming voters and spreading false information. We saw it in 2016 when Russia filtered our country and spread misinformation through Twitter, Meta now, Facebook, etc. So I think that social media, although it's done some good things, it's also done a lot of bad things.
Also, what role do you think younger voters will play in this 2024 election? Are you a first-time voter as well?
I am. Well, actually, this is my first time voting for a presidential election. I voted in the midterms.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, so speaking about how young voters or first-time voters, how do you think they feel, you know, casting their vote for the first time, or, you know, now getting into the generation where it's very open and, you know, it's all over social media that we have, like, you know, go vote, go out to vote, the voting polls, you know, near our homes. How do you think young voters feel and, you know, first-time voters feel on now casting their ballot?
Right. So I'd say it's a little bit difficult for me to have a lot of context behind younger voters, simply because I'm also only 20 years old. This is only my second presidential election that I've lived through. So seeing a lot of young voters, especially, you know, here at U of H, we see a lot of people, a lot of students being really involved in like these issues. We see a lot of students protest at the student center and such. And so I think that it really goes to show how important these issues are to younger voters. And although I'm only 20 years old, I've like had conversations with professors in which they have admitted like your generation is very important. Like our generation really has incentivized, we've incentivized each other to vote, and we have, you know, contributed to the popular vote as of right now. And so I think that like although it's statistically older people vote more, our generation might break that.
Right.
So,
well, thank you so much, Atiti, and thank you for your time and coming. We're going to go toss to Coop TV as well.
The popular vote as of right now. And so I think that like although it's statistically older people
Well,
vote
hello,
more,
Cougs.
our
My name is
generation might
Patience Kimaro. I'm the host for early voting and its impacts for the elections and the benefits for voting on campus. With the early voting, which lasted from October 21st to November 1st. In Harris County, there are over 700 voting polls, and during the early elections, there were 87 locations available. UH was one of them, which increased the voter turnout. For students with a busy schedule, having a voting location on campus allows them access to vote. Daniel Robles, a member of Next Gen America, agreed that a campus with a voting location took less time than other locations.
Well, specifically for the U of H polling location, it is generally like one of the smallest ones in terms of the lines. So you generally go to the U of H one because they keep things running really smooth.
Talking to students who voted in the Student Center, they explained why they believe it's important for those who didn't vote to vote in the upcoming elections.
Kind of like college students are the younger generation, so to say. So having a polling on campus that ensures that the younger generation, the upcoming generation, has their vote voice heard.
Like Josh said, it being we're a demographic, and what I think a lot of people don't realize is that it does impact us. It does impact our generation, the things that we're voting for. So having the opportunity and having access to it is, I mean, the most important thing. So, I mean, definitely important to have a polling place on campus where kids can go and, you know, make their voices heard so that we can make the kind of, you know, changes in our government that, you know, we'd like.
Tune for the election results on our candidates. Back to you, Amy and Angelina.
This is the kind of voter that Harris is really hoping they don't have a lot of, which is people who move from Biden to Trump because of things like prices. That is a storyline that is exactly what the Trump campaign said we were going to see a lot of tonight. Again, it's very early. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's the kind of thing that the Harris campaign has been actively trying to make sure it doesn't happen.
You know, I'm really old, and I remember when Washington State was competitive and had 2 Republican senators. It was basically prior to the tech industry moving there. Is that?
Well, I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, we're talking about Florida, right? I mean, I remember that being a pretty competitive state too. These things move around.
And Democratic.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They change a lot as it goes along. But that doesn't necessarily all reflect all the voters that are in that place. Like you see a big shift among the majority of the voters you don't know. North Carolina is a place that in recent years, if it hadn't been for Robinson being kind of so bad a candidate in the end, that you would have not expected the Democrats to do as well. But now you have a place that has a Democratic governor, looks like replacing a Democratic governor, a big surprise, but in a state that's moved more and more red as things have gone on.
And down in Raleigh, Josh Stein is getting ready to speak. It looks like they're having quite a celebration down there. We certainly will bring that to you live when Governor Stein comes out to talk about his re-election. But that's in Raleigh, and that's live. Next call comes from Alexis in Orem, Utah. Alexis, you with us? Hi. Alexis, Orem, Utah. Please go ahead. Are you with us? Okay, let's try Ryan in Palatine, Illinois. Kamala Harris supporter. Hi, Ryan. Ryan?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Please go ahead. What'd you call in to talk about?
Hi.
Ryan, what'd you call in to talk about?
Hello?
I apologize. I don't know if we're having a minute of trouble here with the phones again or not. Tom in Pennsylvania, a Trump supporter.
Hello?
Tom, you with us? Yeah, we're having a little bit of trouble with the phones here. They'll take care of that. I appreciate it. Let's check in.
Let's check in. My name is Tom. I'm from Pike County, Pennsylvania. Can you hear me?
Tom, we're going to have to let you go for just a second. We're going to check in with Greta Broner.
We have some news coming out of Milwaukee. This is a reporter with CBS in this city. Breaking news here that the city of Milwaukee is going to recount about 30,000 absentee ballots that had already been counted. There was an issue with one tabulator not being sealed. Out of precaution, the city will recount each ballot. A long night just got longer, is what AJ reports here, CBS reporter out of Milwaukee. And then an update here a little after 8. The cavalry had been called in, he reports, from Baird Center. 30 to 40 city firefighters, health department, and IT workers had been sent in to help process absentee ballots. That's the latest out of Milwaukee. We'll keep an eye on that story.
In just a minute, but it is 9 o'clock here on the East Coast. Nearly the entire country, the polls are closed. Here's what's closing at 9 o'clock. Arizona, which has a Senate race and 2 competitive House races as well. Colorado with a competitive House race. Kansas, Louisiana, the rest of Michigan is closed. We've talked about that. Minnesota with a Senate race. Nebraska with 2 Senate races, which we haven't talked about yet, but we will. New Mexico, also has a Senate race. New York is closing. North Dakota with a Senate and a governor's race. South Dakota, Texas is now fully closed. Wisconsin and Wyoming. Evan, that's a lot of states and a lot of news ready to come out, huh?
We're waiting for it.
What are you going to be listening for? What are you going to hear?
Well, we want to see what's going on in Arizona. You know, that's part of one of our swing states we're looking for. And we're talking about some of those western states where, you know, some of these House races are important, and also some of the, you know, that Senate race in Montana, we're looking for that. You know, this is exciting stuff to see all this stuff starting to come in. Although that Milwaukee news does indicate that maybe we may be waiting a long time for some of the presidential results, depending on sort of how close other states are. But we may have a better picture of the Senate relatively, a bit sooner than that.
And in just a minute, Josh Stein will be coming out to give his victory speech in Raleigh, North Carolina. More speeches are going to be happening. That's live from Raleigh there. We're going to check in with Greta Bronner. Greta, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, Peter, let's take a look remind viewers what we talked about earlier, and that is the cost of this race. You had noted at the beginning that $16 billion total in these federal election races. This is the money from outside spending on the 2024 elections. This is from Open Secrets, and it hit a record $4.5 billion, with more than half of that spending coming from groups that did not fully disclose their source of the funding, that from the Associated Press. And then also, we showed you this earlier. Here are the top 10 billionaire families by political contributions. This is from the Americans for Tax Fairness. They put this report together in the final days of this campaign, and you can see the first 6 wealthy families all donating to Republicans, followed by the Simons family and the Bloomberg family for Democrats there. Elon Musk, $133 million, according to the Americans for Tax Fairness. Peter?
And in just a few minutes, we will be going to Josh Stein and other victory and concession speeches throughout the evening. But with the polls closing in several states, I want to ask you about a Senate race in New Mexico. President Trump stopped there on his way to Arizona and Nevada and rally in Albuquerque and mentioned Nella Domenici. Who is she?
This is a really interesting thing that the President Trump did stop in New Mexico. I have to say, I'm not completely versed in that race. I've been very focused on the 7 states we've all been talking about.
Well, I don't think any of us were, but Senator Heinrich is running for re-election, of course, right. And Pete Domenici's daughter is the Republican nominee. Is it competitive? Have you heard anything about that being competitive?
Well, this is one of those things where sometimes when you see Trump do things, you're not exactly sure what the result is going to be in terms of electoral things. You know, he popped up in New York a couple times, not very helpful to his presidential race. But look, they think they can make a game of it, and I think they're going to give it a shot. I don't think that Democrats have been very concerned about it, no.
Let's hear from Tom in Tafton, Pennsylvania, a Trump supporter. Tom, are you with us? No, okay.
I can hear you through the television, sir.
We can't do it that way. Sorry, Tom. There's a delay, so we don't have any calls at this point. Okay, we're going to have to take Tom down. I apologize to everybody, and I apologize to you especially, Tom, that we're unable to do that right now. But you can always send a text message in, and we will get to some of those as we go throughout this evening. 202-748-8903 is the number for text messages. Please include your first name and your city if you would, so we can identify you that way. And you can continue this conversation both on X at C-SPAN and on Facebook, facebook.com/C-SPAN. Greta Bronner, what do you got?
Let's check in on the state of Florida and the Senate race there. Rick Scott, the Republican incumbent, seeking another term in the Senate. He is a wealthy businessman that has loaned $22 million in this cycle, according to Hotline, to his race. The Associated Press has declared him the winner tonight. 92% of the vote in Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, the former congresswoman, challenging him for this seat. Democrats were getting a little optimistic in the last month of this race, hoping that she would be able to take out Rick Scott, but that is not the case this evening. That stays with Republicans, that Senate seat. Moving on to the abortion ballot initiative in the state of Florida. There are 10 states that have ballot initiatives this election cycle, and Florida is one of them. On Amendment 4, take a look at the results right now. 91% of the votes in, 57% of the voters have voted yes on Amendment 4. It's an amendment to limit government interference with abortion. It states that no law shall prohibit, penalize, delay, or restrict abortion before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, was fighting against this abortion ballot initiative, and it looks like the Florida voters are in favor of it. It needs 60%, though, in the state of Florida, so we're going to keep watching it to see if it can meet that threshold. Peter?
Evan McMorris Santoro, Florida. Trump, it's already been declared for President Trump. Rick Scott, it's been declared for Rick Scott. And it's voting for a pro-choice ballot amendment.
The last one is a little bit different because of the rules in Florida. You have to reach a 60% threshold to for a ballot initiative to count, right? So it's a little bit like cloture. People on C-SPAN are well aware of what this is, where like something can lose while getting more votes, right? That's it. That's the case with that abortion ballot amendment that we've seen. But you know, that Rick Scott race, there was a minute or two when there was some conversation that this might actually be a competitive race. We had a reporter from Notice who was mentioning this Scott a lot, like he was sort of declining to debate his opponent there that he just defeated tonight. This was sort of, maybe there was a chance that Democrats might have a race there. But again, this is sort of like Florida just comes up to appear to be wishful thinking for the Democrats. They just, once again, do not have a handle on sort of how to make the electoral impact there, even in a moment where you did see more voters vote for the pro-choice amendment than against it. It's just the fact is because of the rules there, it didn't pass. But they can't turn that into electoral wins in other parts, on these ballot races. Like, I mean, on these on these candidate races, obviously.
Now, before we lose you, and we're going to lose you in a few minutes too, because you have work to do as well. There are 2 Senate seats up in Nebraska, both Deb Fischer and Pete Ricketts. Why 2?
I actually don't totally know why there's 2. I'm sorry. You keep catching me out on this. I feel like
I apologize.
This is like the C-SPAN Haitian near the end. No, I'm sorry. I really should be up on it more. But the Nebraska race is quite fascinating because you have a race where there's an independent candidate running against Fischer and has gotten a lot of
Dan Osborne.
That's right. Has gotten a lot of coverage, a lot of focus. This is a former union leader. He's gotten a lot of focus from national unions have gone in there to do things. I'm not sure that in the end we necessarily expect this person, Dan Osborne, to win this election. However, you do have this situation where this is a different kind of candidate running in a state like that and actually putting a scare into the Republicans there. It could be a sign of the future of politics in some of these places with these rural voters and these, as politics maybe realigns a bit, that maybe a different kind of candidate will be the ones who face these Republicans down.
And Pete Ricketts, the other senator in Nebraska, is having a special election, because he filled in for Ben Sass.
That's right.
All of that
to go to Florida to run a college there. Yes.
Right. The Arizona polls have closed, so we'll be looking forward to getting some results from there as well. We're waiting on several other states to be called. Evan, I just pulled up from cspan.org/results. You go to your own very own magic wall that you can get on your in your hand, and I pulled up Georgia. And just looking at this, you can see the map there of Georgia. It's got blue dots and red dots showing, and then the big dot, of course, is Atlanta in Fulton County. And you go there, and Kamala Harris has 72% of the vote currently.
Valenti School of Communication. Hi, welcome back to the second half of Cook TV and Valenti School of Communication. Good evening, my name is Ricky Munoz.
I'm Daniela Tahuapara. We're both seniors and journalism majors, and we're thrilled to bring you tonight more coverage about the 2024 presidential elections and also some of the Texas Senate elections.
We're going to take a closer look at Jacob's package. He's been focusing on the trail. Let's see what Jacob has to say about this.
Texas Republicans have comfortably relied on voters to support their candidates up and down the ballot, cementing the state as a solid red fortress with its massive 40 electoral votes. Because of this, Democratic presidential nominees have typically avoided campaigning in Texas this close to an election, and for good reason. But on October 25th, Vice President Kamala Harris broke from decades of precedent and hosted a rally featuring dozens of prolific speakers and performers like Beyonce, Willie Nelson, and more, in an effort to sway Houston's massive amount of urban voters. After news broke of Beyonce's surprise cameo, signups for this rally exceeded over 1 million voters, resulting in hour-long lines outside of the Shell Energy Stadium as early as 9 a.m. Here are some of the things that potential voters had to say.
Defending democracy is the most important issue for me.
We in Texas, we are tired of what has been going on, as well as the rest of the country. She knows that there's a chance for her to win Texas.
In the days that followed, we were allowed a sneak peek into the strategies at play from the Chief of Staff of the Harris County Democratic Party, and we got to ask him about this campaign's bullish tactics and what this rally could accomplish.
And I think there's a number of factors at play. One is if Harris is elected, she knows that she needs to have a Senate behind her, right, to really get the kind of policy that she wants to get done. One of the few races where the Democrats could actually have a pickup in the Senate is the Allred Cruz race, right? They need Colin Allred to win. Having a huge rally of this nature really puts the wind in the sails of the Allred campaign.
That same morning, Harris County Republicans teamed up with beloved Houston area philanthropist and furniture salesman Mattress Mac to host a pro-Trump counter rally at his Gallery Furniture store. Here, various speakers and elected officials laid into Biden's economic and immigration policies, casting Kamala Harris as a direct continuation of his agenda. The voters attending have their own things to say about this election.
Because that's what you see around us, your economy, world trade, wars and fights, all that's getting worse. And the current vice president who's running for president has helped create this crisis.
I think that everybody needs to vote, whether you vote D or R. Get out there and exercise your right. That's what the country's all about.
Right now, we're seeing two major political parties flexing their resources and optimism in a way that hasn't been seen in Texas for decades. Republicans are well aware, and their well-funded machine is dedicated to bringing out voters faithful to Donald Trump, but also to voters who are still undecided in these final hours.
Jacob, thank you. Now let's take a closer look at what's going on C-SPAN.
/results.
And we'll be back with Greta with more results shortly. But right now, the current governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, is introducing Josh Stein, who just got elected governor of North Carolina.
Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We also hold next to our hearts the people of Western North Carolina. We're going to work hard to make sure they recover. We got a long night ahead of us. I know everybody's watching closely for the rest of the results because we know our country must make the right choice, and we have important elections across the state. But we need to take a moment right now. We need to take a moment for our beautiful home state of North Carolina because we have done something important here with this victory in the governor's race. You know, every election gives us choices, and there's never been a wider gulf between the choices in this race. And so tonight, with this victory, I ask you, North Carolina, did we choose progress? Did we choose experience? Did we choose reproductive freedom for women? Did we choose support for our public schools? Yes, we did. We chose all of that and more. I've known our next governor for a long time, and North Carolina is better because he's been an amazing public servant and attorney general. And now it's time for his new job. And Kristen and I can tell you, it's a job that truly matters in the lives of everyday North Carolinians. Serving as your governor has been the honor of my lifetime. And by working together, we've expanded Medicaid. We've recruited a record number of good-paying jobs. We've passed clean energy legislation to get us to carbon zero future, appointed the most diverse cabinet and staff in the history of our state. And we've stopped a lot of bad legislation. And so much more. I know what it takes to do this job. And I knew that to keep our progress going forward, we needed to write the right person to take over when it was time for me to leave. We needed a person with integrity and grit. We needed a person who will work with anyone to get the job done. We needed a person who will never back down from doing the right thing. We need a person who will blaze his own trails, and we got that tonight. He is ready to do this job and to do it right. He has the steady hand, the clear-eyed vision, and the servant's heart to make.
And there you have it. We have live coverage from C-SPAN right now. A lot of information is really coming in right now, Daniela. And I'll tell you that we were outside the Student Center a little bit ago before we came live. And we had students really just wanting to know what's going on. And these numbers are a little bit confusing. Well, tell us a little bit about what you see.
Well, that I've been informed, Trump is currently at 120 electoral votes right now, and we're trying to get to 270 to win. So it looks like Trump is winning compared to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is behind at the moment, so we still need, we still have a little more time left. It's 8:18, so we still have time to keep going. Trump is leading, so we can see Trump either winning or we can have Harris lead on in a few more. We still have Georgia right now, currently has 72%. And last time we checked, Harris, I think, was winning in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania is a really important state for both of these candidates.
That's right. And then earlier, before we even came into the studio, we were looking at Texas. Texas is still trying to decide whether it's going to go blue or it's going to stay red. And is right now, everyone's talking to a few students outside the hallway, and they were like really wanting Kamala Harris to win this election because a lot of things are in stake right now for those students. And it's just all this information right now, we don't know where it's going. But right now, we know that Trump is leading, and there's more information that's going to come soon.
Yeah, I also understood that this is very important for both of the candidates, specifically Harris. If she wins, she becomes the first female president. But if Trump wins, he becomes the first president after I believe it's
the two non-consecutive terms.
Yes.
So it's both events are going to be historic, whether one wins or the other. So it's really nerve-wracking, and we're getting all this information as it comes, right? So, but we're going to continue keeping you informed and keeping you up to date with all the info that's coming.
Yes, exactly. So while we're going to this, we're going to get back to candidates, including former President Trump and current Vice President Kamala Harris. And although these are important elections presidential-wise, at this moment, the polls have closed, and Angelina will walk us through what each candidate promised if they were to win these presidential elections.
Key points between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris that you need to know. Starting with Vice President Kamala Harris, who pushes for affordable housing to reduce homelessness and also advocates for federal programs to be more accessible to the public. While Donald Trump encourages new construction that could lead to lower mortgage and inflation rates as well. Vice President Kamala Harris has said a no to across-the-board tariffs. The Biden administration has not favored across-the-board tariffs, only advocated for materials such as steel and aluminum from China, which resulted in accusation of unfair trade practice in the United States. while Donald Trump stands for across-the-board tariffs, advocating a proposal for a 10% tariff on all imported goods. Trump also has stated that the percentage can go up on all imports from China. I also went around the University of Houston campus to get some thoughts and opinions on how people perceive Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and how they also perceive Donald Trump's immigration policy.
The policies they've espoused seem to be diametrically opposed. What they're actually going to do when they get in office is another issue. I've seen over my very long lifetime that what presidents pretend or say they're going to do is usually not what they do.
Yeah, I feel like Trump is very out there. He's very, I think he loves the media. He loves getting his name out there. And I feel like Kamala is very much trying to stir the media to make herself seem like a really good person.
Now onto the abortion plan that has the world divided. Kamala Harris wants to restore Roe v. Wade into a federal law to ensure the right to choose is protected, while also has pushed for policies that expand access to reproductive health care. Harris's approach reflects to ensure that all individuals have the right to make decisions about their own bodies without government interference.
To make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do.
Meanwhile, Trump used to support abortion rights, but ultimately has changed over time.
The baby is born, the baby is executed after birth is unacceptable, and almost everyone agrees with that.
Hello, welcome back to the show. I'm here with the president of the UH Democrats, Jonathan. I'm here to ask him some questions about student turnout and what's happening in this election tonight. So go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about some of the work that y'all are doing here on campus.
Yeah, absolutely. Jacob, thank you. And my name is Jonathan, president of UH Dems. We've been out this semester, given the election and how big this is, a presidential year, out on campus, outside of campus too, around the county, just making sure people are registered first. That was our main thing. Up from when school started, up until the registration deadline, it was just zoning in on that. We shied away from having general meetings and stuff to really focus on that. And then after that, it was more so voter education. We did a few events letting people know how you get your sample ballot, where you can find polling locations, stuff like that, right? And then after that come, early vote, election day, it was just getting people to the polls. We were outside library, other parts of campus, letting folks know, hey, it's time. Have to head on over to the student center, vote. We also gave them, some info, letting them know about all the candidates, all the Dems, obviously, and just hoping to really get students out and having them vote.
Thank you. Okay, so the first question that I have prepared, really diving into this topic, can you tell us about tell us about the kind of optimism that UH Democrats are specifically feeling when it comes to student turnout, and do you think that y'all can really push that needle further than what happened over the past few elections?
Absolutely, absolutely. The energy and enthusiasm we've been seeing is more than any of us could have guessed going into the semester. We really thought it was going to be a bit of a tough one. Come August, we were like, all right, big one. We really need to show up, show out. But honestly, it's been incredible. Everybody's insanely enthusiastic. The enthusiasm is just incredible because there's so much on the line that people are paying more attention. A lot of people coming to us even and seeing how they can get involved. Who they should be looking for on their ballot, stuff like that. So it's truly been incredible.
So you mentioned people coming to you about different things, about coming to UH Democrats. Have you seen any of that kind of buy-in from state party leaders or local party leaders? For example, the Call an All Red campaign or the Kamala Harris campaign. Have they showed an interest in organizing with college students to turn out voters?
Absolutely, absolutely. This year, especially, compared to other years, it's been incredible. I think they've realized how important, the young vote is, Gen Z specifically. I couldn't tell you how many campaigns have come to us. I think everybody on the Dem slate this year has come to us at some point, whether they be state house races, judicial races, Senate or even the Harris campaign, they reached out to us whenever they had the rally in Houston. They had UH Dems come out for that. Allred, he's also had us come out for some rallies he's had here and other events around the county. And then all the other candidates have been amazing, you know, like Annette Ramirez, Lauren Ashley Simmons, Ann Johnson, Menifee, Shantir, everybody, all the judges. They really have been incredible in coming out saying, how can we reach young people, you know? How can we talk to them? How can we engage with them? How can we get them out to vote, volunteer, get involved, stuff like that.
Cool. So my next question is, thinking about the kind of issues right now that are really galvanizing young voters to actually go to the polls, can you speak more to what those issues are?
Yeah, I'd say a big one is abortion, obviously. Abortion and public ed. I'll start off with abortion. Ever since Roe v. Wade was overturned, you know, under the Trump admin by Supreme Court justices that he handpicked to do just that, we've seen an uproar in young people wanting to get involved, wanting to make a change, because they've seen how this is affecting them. I mean, a lot of them, everybody right now, growing up with less rights than perhaps their parents did when they were their same age. You know, we've been seeing people dying because of this. In Texas, the maternal mortality rate has gone up ever since the extreme abortion ban has gone into place. And young people are noticing. They're fed up, and they really want to make a change about that. And public ed as well. You know, when you see vouchers being pushed by Governor Abbott and Republicans in the state legislature, students are paying attention, you know. They see how this is a scam and how they're taking money, they want to take away money from public schools that we came from. I went to a public school, right? And so they're fed up with all of this and a ton of other issues, but these are two of the main ones I hear about every day. And they want to get involved, they want to make a change.
I definitely see them making an impact, and like I said, we're really grateful to have people like you come and speak to us and like talk to students about what the issues, like the most important issues are. So I do want to thank you for your time, Jonathan. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Plus, a lot of them were hard, or they appeared hard, but I'm like, looking back, I'm like, I credit for making me who I am. Besides my parents, I'm also like, a lot of my teachers impacted me positively, and I'm like, I thank God for them, because I don't think I'd have like learned. There we go. Hello, Cougs. I'm Patience Kimaro, and I'm speaking with an election clerk, Freddie Chappell-Wright. Freddie Chappell-Wright, thank you so much for this interview.
It's my pleasure.
So, what made you decide to volunteer as an election clerk?
I decided to volunteer as an election clerk because I worked with my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta, Sorority Incorporated, as part of a social action committee. And in social action, that means you socialize all the aspects of public service, education, and when you say public service, that entails voting, volunteering, etc. And I've always been a person who inspired to help other people. And being a clerk was a way for me to give back to my community. Not so much as the work, but to be around the people and seeing them. And we always had a forum when we'd have the candidates who were running for office to come and speak to us and get to know their point of view of what they were going to do for the community or for any other office, whether it was local or federal. So that's how I got involved with we call social action. And so being a clerk, you interact with so many people and you can get your point of view over to those people. We had forums when we talked about the candidates came and spoke to us, and we could hear their point of view firsthand. Instead of reading it, we could hear them speak to what they were going to, of course, do for the community, and etc. And I just wanted to be a part of that because I could speak to them directly, not, and ask them questions. What can you do for our community? And that's, to me, that's very important. So that's how I got involved with the social action.
So why do you believe it is important for the community, regardless of what the community is, to be able to use their voice to vote, to use their voice to not only vote, but also to take action when it comes to our government?
Well, the government is the one that makes the rules. And the rules are not always geared to each ethnic group equally. So if that's something you want to change, your voice is your vote. So it's important to vote on those issues. And if you don't agree with what they're doing or what they're not doing for you as an individual or a community, you get together, find out all the aspects of what this bill contains, and what you don't like, you get out and you protest. If that doesn't work, you meet with the people, and if they don't agree with what you want, you vote them out. So that's why your vote is your voice.
So do you remember the first time you have ever voted?
Yes. I was in college when I first voted. And it's such an exhilarating feeling that you made a difference. You use your voice for change. And that's what I would. In college, you know how you always, you on the, what is you doing?
Journalism.
Yeah, journalism. Yes. So, suppose there was something, an article you wanted to write, and everybody disagreed with you. So, it's like you would protest. So this is my opinion. That's why I say your vote is your voice. So that's your opinion.
Okay. Thank you, Freddie Chapel-Wright, for this interview and for your words on how voting impacted. We do appreciate. Back to you.
Thank you. We're learning right now on C-SPAN that Pennsylvania right now is being led by Kamala Harris. And they're pretty much trying to project the counties, if they're going to turn red, they're going to turn blue. But we want to go live and see what you guys can see on C-SPAN. Let's take it away.
Vote for.
All right. I voted for Randall Terry, Constitution Party.
And why did you vote for Mr. Terry?
Basically, I disapproved of the major party candidates this time around. And I also wanted to mention my primary reason for calling is to support something called approval voting. You mentioned ranked choice voting, but I wanted to support approval voting as an alternative method. It's easier to implement, easier to cast your ballots, and it has, I guess, a better, in terms of just overall fairness of
Hey, Mike, how does approval voting work?
Oh, okay. Great question. So basically, rather than ranking the candidates, you just check which candidates you approve of. So it's either a yes or no for each of the candidates. But basically, it allows you to express approval for more than one candidate, but you also have to think, is this a candidate I'm willing to compromise for? And it would tend, particularly in a presidential election, to allow for compromised candidates to have more of an advantage. And I think that would be good for the country.
Is that used anywhere?
Well, I know in this election, the only I think there's a mayor's race in St. Louis that used it, if not this election, a recent election.
Okay.
And I know, and as far as there's actually an approval voting party in Colorado, where that's kind of where it's centered. Unfortunately, I couldn't vote for that party on my ballot, but.
Hey, Mike, you said you voted for Randall Terry of the Constitution Party. Is this the same Randall Terry who's been very active in anti-abortion activities?
Yeah, but I mainly voted for him to support the party rather than him specifically.
Thank you, sir, for calling in from Fort Lauderdale. Greta Bronner is here at C-SPAN.
Let's go through the battleground states in the presidential contest, beginning with
Frontier Fiesta is a 3-day Western themed festival. We have all kinds of things throughout the 3 days, from a headlining concert.
We have a Ferris wheel, food, live music.
We have something for everybody. So the event is entirely planned and run by students.
Its focus is to really promote inclusion on campus and have a great time, as well as just really celebrate what it means to be UH Cougar.
It's not only for us students, but it's also for faculty, alumni, and the greater Houston community.
Frontier Fiesta is the longest standing programming tradition at the University of Houston. It started in 1939, and then by the 1960s, it was called the greatest college show on earth by Life magazine. It really came to fruition in its current form in 1991. There's a lot of things that stay the same year over year, and sometimes we make some really big changes.
Frontier Fiesta has been important to me since I was in college. I was on the board as a chair. Years later, with Houston Tents and Events, we're the vendor that handles all the tents and infrastructure and tables and chairs. It is my way of still feeling involved with something. Now my focus and my goal is to try to take it to the next step, using Houston Tents and Events as a catalyst to improve the experience.
It takes a lot of dedication and hard work. On site, we have to carry a lot of things from the Student Center back to here. We also build a lot of murals and repaint murals.
What I was most looking forward to for Fiesta was the variety shows. They've always been my favorite part, and the energy is always insane in the tent.
I'm definitely excited for Juicy J.
I think the thing I'm really looking forward to most this weekend is working with the students. They've put a lot of time, energy, and effort into this, and I'm really excited to see the look on their faces when it all pays off. They should be really proud of the work that they've done this year.
This event is a staple for University of Houston. It brings all the student body together. It brings alumni back for the cook-off portion. It is something that students are going to want to be a part of for a long time and ensure that it stays around and continues to flourish for many decades to come.
I believe in tradition. Keeping this going and being a part of something is definitely important, making something happen for all of us.
Welcome back to Valenti and Kook TV live broadcast for the decision of 2024. I'm here with Kook TV and Valenti. My name is Daniela Palau.
And good evening. My name is Ricky Munoz. We're both seniors here at the University of Houston, and we are still following the live coverage on C-SPAN. And right now, we're hearing a lot of information just coming through. Daniela, what did you hear?
Well, currently I was told that Ted Cruz is winning against Alred. So we're going back to the regular Ted Cruz red state. Before, Alred was winning by a couple points, but now we're seeing that Cruz is taking over again. So we're going back again, like I said, to that normal red state that we're all accustomed to here in Texas. But also we're also seeing that Trump is at 178. So that means he's getting closer and closer to 270.
Now let's not panic just yet. We still have time. We have all those different swing states that we still have to get votes on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people, you know, people when we were talking through at the University of Houston, especially at the Student Center, are really wanting that these swing states really aim for Kamala Harris. And right now we're just still waiting for that information to come through. We know that the popular vote right now is leading towards Donald Trump by a few more points than Kamala Harris. So. But right now, let's go back into live into C-SPAN and see what else they're talking about.
It's impartial, and it's been nice hearing everyone's views. And I think the biggest thing too, which is what I was feeling, is that we're really not being heard. I think it's why a lot of people are coming in with ranked choice voting, kind of celebrating that, or maybe other options to try and just get our voices heard. I also think it's why people are feeling so strongly on things. I've always been a blue voter, honestly. I registered Republican because that's how I grew up. And my first election, I voted for Obama. So I decided to stick with it. And I've lived in Republican areas and Democrat areas. And it's really just been, and I get why people maybe are switching parties, because nothing seems to really have changed. I think maybe getting a lot of dark money out of our elections, which both candidates are kind of have used, especially in this election, it will certainly help us get our voices heard. But my main issue, honestly, is for abortion. I'm really hoping, too, that even if for some reason Harris doesn't win in Arizona, that we have Prop 139 kind of enshrine that right in our Constitution.
Yeah, that was on your ballot this year, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's correct. I'm really hoping that passes, because either way, our states do have rights, no matter who ends up being the majority party in power. So I'm hoping that comes through.
Hey, Cassandra, being a battleground state, how would you describe that experience?
It's kind of interesting, just because I have a lot of family who's also voting Republican, and people that I know and work with. I think you can always tell. It's almost kind of like the same version that voter in Alaska had, where you try and keep it, to yourself mostly, unless you're really going out there and campaigning. Try and keep the peace. But I'm really hoping, too, that if for some reason there's some discrepancy with voting, that everyone stays safe, because it can get pretty heated. So I definitely went in 2 weeks beforehand and cast my vote, because I don't want to be at the voting offices today. So.
And what do you do out in Phoenix?
I actually sell insurance and service insurance policies.
Cassandra, thanks for spending a few minutes with us. We appreciate your watching. Up next is Harold. Harold is in Chatham, New York, a Trump supporter. Hi, Harold.
Hi. How you doing?
Why are you calling?
Yeah, I today right there I fight for Donald Trump. He says he's going to lower the gas price, and he's going to trying to cut the gas price down. I trust Donald Trump before I don't trust Joe Biden. Kamala Harris, they wanted to raise it up jack high. That's why my wife and I get $125 with the food stamp, because Joe Biden is low. It's going up, and Kamala Harris is going up.
All right. Harold, really appreciate your calling in and watching C-SPAN tonight. Thank you. Greta Bronner, what do you have?
Heard from some of our viewers tonight that reproductive rights is what drove them to the polls. As we've said, 10 states had abortion rights measures on the ballots this election cycle, and there have been races called, or ballot initiatives called, by the Associated Press.
Welcome back. Now we're learning a lot of different information right now that's really important. Pennsylvania right now, Kamala Harris is leading the electoral vote, when she might win the state. We don't know yet.
The thing is, though, Pennsylvania, Harris is 51, I believe, and Trump is 47.
Right.
So she is leading, but it's still really close. So Trump can still try to go for those votes. We still haven't gotten to the full 270 yet. So they're still counting votes until we get to that number. So it's still all up in the air.
Now,
if Pennsylvania is theirs.
But if you remember, like Pennsylvania right now is a really important state because if you guys remember a few weeks ago, Mr. Donald Trump had a rally out there, and he had a comedian that came out, right? And that comedian really said some things that probably shouldn't have been said, and he said Puerto Rico is an island of trash. So we all know that there's a lot of population in Pennsylvania that are pretty much made up of Puerto Ricans, right? So right now, everyone's watching the state so close because it can be a pivotal point for the presidential election.
Yeah, I think so too.
So let's continue going. I think we're going into one of the packages. Let's see what our team at Cook TV, it's about the senators. Let's see what Cook TV has to say about this one.
Press put together by Axios, and you can see the fundraised million spent for these ballot initiatives, while only 24 million spent against. Peter?
And we're going to continue to take your calls and get results, and when the speeches come in, the concessions and the victories, we'll go to those live as well. Ryan is in Chicago. Ryan, good evening to you. Who'd you vote for?
Good evening. How you doing?
How are you?
I'm doing good. First of all, I just want to say the fact that you guys are staying up till 3 a.m. doing this is awesome. You're doing the Lord's work. Thank you, because this is
It seems like we're having a few technical issues. So that was Amy. Amy, thank you. Texas Senator, so it's really important right now, right? Colin Allred and Senator Ted Cruz.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what are the, you're smarter than me on this part of it than I am. So tell me a little bit about, I think, the political point of view. I know that Ted Cruz is very strict on the immigration laws, border control, and Colin Allred is really more of the other side of it. What do you know about that part?
Yeah, well, at the moment, all that I know is that, of course, Colin Allred is on the same side, Democratic, with Kamala Harris as well. So with the whole Roe v. Wade, he's very into trying to protect women's rights in terms of abortion. Ted Cruz, like most of the Republicans and Trump, is not for abortion and all that kind of stuff. Ted Cruz is also more focused on immigration. Ted Cruz is also more into immigration in senses. So besides that, I don't have really much other information, but Ted Cruz is winning at this moment. So we're back to our red state like we know it before.
Well, again, all the votes aren't counted yet, so you guys have
all
to be
the votes
really
are counted,
patient.
exactly.
But I mean, I will tell you a little bit about that. I have a lot of friends that are immigrants, right? And right now they're really honestly sweating palms because they're afraid that if obviously Mr. Cruz is reelected again, a lot of things are going to change here in the Lone Star State. But again, the votes aren't counted; they're not done yet, and we're going to continue watching this live and giving you the information as it comes through, so you guys are up to date. Right?
Yes. So we'll go back to C-SPAN for more information.
like, as we move forward, if verifiable facts do not matter, how do we vote as a people, and how do we reach people that are kind of confused on certain issues if people can just brush aside something that is verifiably true and that has just facts behind it, but yet people can kind of brush it off like, well, I didn't see it, so I don't pay attention to it. Like I
Ryan,
feel like
we appreciate it. Thanks for that thought provoker. What do you do in Chicago?
I'm a writer.
What kind of writer?
Creative writing, and I also do some more like technical writing, but my main thing is creative writing. So that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for calling in. Kevin is next. Kevin is calling in from Pennsylvania on our support President Trump line. McCunkie, did I get it right?
Yeah, somewhat right. How you doing?
How are you? Where's McCunkie?
It's like on the outskirts of Allentown.
Okay. So, what was the process like for you? What's the election been like for you, Kevin, in a swing state?
It was a bit turbulent, because Pennsylvania, despite being the state, where the country was founded, seems like not too many people put thought into it. So, once November comes around, it seems like everybody starts caring.
Was it tense?
A little bit, but I try and stay calm through it.
Yeah.
And I was mostly calm because I knew I was certain that I was voting for Trump because of two main issues: the cost of items and abortion.
Okay. Kevin, President Trump was there 20 plus times. Did you ever go to a rally?
I have not because I was busy with work and stuff. But I wish I did because his rallies, they just seem fun. They seem down to earth. Like he just seems like a guy that gets people. Though if I did have the option, though, I would have voted for Mega Man because Dr. Wiley must be stopped.
That's Kevin in Pennsylvania. Rob is next, Dayton, Ohio. A Kamala Harris supporter. Hi, Rob.
How you doing, Peter?
How are you?
Oh, I'm just great.
What's on your mind?
Yeah, so the reason I voted for Kamala Harris is because for me as an Ohioan, I really care about my own rights as an American. And since 2020, what has been talked about is Donald Trump wanting to take away the First Amendment right for news organizations to sue them if he doesn't like the stories that are told about him. He wants to take away the Americans' right to free speech when it comes to burning the American flag to protest. So to me, it was all about my rights as an American and about other Americans' rights to protest, for the news to do their job, and stuff like that.
Now, Rob, did you vote straight Democratic? There's been some talk that Mike Turner, the congressman from Dayton, might be in a close race.
No, actually, I'm actually a registered Republican. I voted for Mike Turner.
Really? And you voted for Kamala Harris and Mike Turner?
Yep. I also voted for Sherrod Brown.
And Sherrod Brown. Okay. You're all over the board. What do you do there in Dayton?
Oh, I'm an electrician. I'm an industrial and commercial electrician.
Who did you support 4 years ago?
4 years ago, I supported Joseph Biden, and 4 years before that, I supported Donald Trump.
Welcome back. We're here with Jacqueline, one of the students who was attending the Political Science Department watch party and came here to talk to us. Can you explain just a little bit about yourself first and foremost?
My name is Jacqueline Vasquez. I am a psychology and legal studies minor and major at the University of Houston, and I've just been really interested in this political election, mainly because it's my first one. I'm a first-time voter. I definitely came from a very Republican household. I'm, state of Texas, everybody's kind of already leaning on Trump, but I wanted to kind of have my own open opinion about the election and just be open to both parties, not just immediately choosing Republican because everybody around me is.
Since this is your first time voting, what did you do to prepare? Did you do anything to prepare before, or did you already know who you were going to vote for once
I knew who I was going to vote for once I got there. Of course, I tried to do my information and my research beforehand, but actually the process of voting, I had no idea what I was going into. I didn't know that I knew you needed to do IID, but that was about all I knew. And I kind of liked how people explained it. I got there, it was really simple, it was really easy. I went to early voting, so it wasn't very chaotic or anything. It was very simple, so I liked it. It was a nice experience for first time voting.
Well, for right now, the Electoral College says that 178 is going to Trump, and we need to get to 270, and Kamala Harris is at 99 electoral votes. What does this mean to you as a student?
Oh, well, of course it means Trump is winning. So, no, a lot of people around me are definitely happy about that, and I know that this election itself is very polarized. I haven't experienced any elections from a voter's perspective. It's always been just hearing my parents or my aunts or somebody else talk about it, but actually researching, understanding how their policies can affect me and my family, it's been different. And it's been something new that definitely there's a lot more at stake for me personally on this election. And I mean, I just hope that though whoever gets elected, that people just stay respectful, they stay kind, and it doesn't become anything aggressive, kind of like last election, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. And we also have the Senate race as well. What do you think about that, since that one is also something that affects Texas people a little more than the president would?
I think that one is same thing. It's very close. There's a lot of people that are very passionate about either Colin Allred or Ted Cruz, and I feel like it's a lot to do with reproductive rights, if I'm being honest, that a lot of it is leaning on that. A lot of it is leaning on the crisis at the border and immigration. And of course, those are just topics people are very passionate about. And even in Texas, a lot of people can relate to those topics directly, whether they're a woman, whether they're a Latino. It's just a lot of it is at stake, and a lot of it personally affects people.
There's also been talk that Trump is planning on already saying that he's going to win towards the night, and when the votes have not been fully counted. What do you think about that move as a presidential candidate?
Well, I've always just known and heard of the saying, don't count your chickens before they hatch. And so, don't get me wrong, if he does win, good for him, but I feel like that confidence can sometimes rub off the wrong way on people, especially when they're trying to choose a candidate. They might see that as like being cocky or just not thinking ahead and being mindful of the things that they say. So it really can just rub off the wrong way on people if he doesn't pay attention or look right at the way that he speaks.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't talked about?
No, not entirely. Just stay safe. Remember, keep your cool with people. Don't be so into this election, and just remember that no matter who wins, regardless, you need to stay kind, and hopefully people don't get as aggressive. That's all I hope for.
I hope so too. I don't need the whole issue again with the January 6th riot.
Literally,
we don't need
a lot of tension.
Yes.
So definitely, there's a lot of excitement, but a lot of tension on this election.
Yes, I definitely understand from all the other ones. Whoever wins, we also have to remember that the most important thing is our families and our friends. And we should always keep those relationships the closest to our hearts. Whether we have a friend who's a Republican or we have a friend that's a Democrat, we also have to keep in mind that we should still love each other either
and respect
way.
Each other,
Exactly.
regardless.
Exactly.
Yes, it's even though there's a lot of things that affect people, you have to have respect. And unless you have an open mind towards both parties, it's sometimes gets hard whenever you just hear the things that both candidates have said already about each other.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Of course.
So that's all we have for today. We're going to cut to break, but we'll have more when we come back. Thank you.
Frontier Fiesta is a 3-day Western themed festival. We have all kinds of things throughout the 3 days, from a headlining concert.
We have a Ferris wheel, food, live music.
We have something for everybody. So the event is entirely planned and run by students.
Its focus is to really promote inclusion on campus and have a great time, as well as just really celebrate what it means to be UH Cougar.
It's not only for us students, but it's also for faculty, alumni, and the greater Houston community.
Frontier Fiesta is the longest standing programming tradition at the University of Houston. It started in 1939, and then by the 1960s it was called the greatest college show on earth by Life magazine. It really came to fruition in its current form in 1991. There's a lot of things that stay the same year over year, and sometimes we make some really big changes.
Frontier Fiesta has been important to me since I was in college. I was on the board as a chair. Years later, with Houston Tents and Events, we're the vendor that handles all the tents and infrastructure and tables and chairs. It is my way of still feeling involved with something. Now my focus and my goal is to try to take it to the next step, using Houston Tents and Events as a catalyst to improve the experience.
It takes a lot of dedication and hard work. On site, we have to carry a lot of things from the Student Center back to here. We also build a lot of murals and repaint murals.
What I was most looking forward to for Fiesta was the variety shows. They've always been my favorite part, and the energy is always insane in the tent.
I'm definitely excited for Juicy J.
I think the thing I'm really looking forward to most this weekend is working with the students. They put a lot of time, energy, and effort into this, and I'm really excited to see the look on their faces when it all pays off. They should be really proud of the work that they've done this year.
This event is a staple for University of Houston. It brings all the student body together. It brings alumni back for the cook-off portion. It is something that students are going to want to be a part of for a long time and ensure that it stays around and continues to flourish for many decades to come.
I believe in tradition. Keeping this going and being a part of something is definitely important, making something happen for all of us.
We just found out, welcome back by the way, we just found out that Mr. Donald Trump just won the state of Missouri. So breaking news on that. We're going to continue keeping you guys updated and informed as information comes our way. Daniela, what do you think about that?
Well, Missouri is important, but we have to focus more on swing states more than anything, because most of these other states that aren't swing states are already planned from advance on being either Democrat or Republican. But from the information that I currently have, it seems like Trump has won almost all of the swing states except for 2, which are Pennsylvania and Michigan. I still don't have anything about Nevada yet, so we still have to look at that. But Trump has a majority of these swing states. But like we've said before, we still have to wait until we get to 270. But the update has been that Trump is at 188, so he is getting closer and closer to 270. So
now, if you guys recall, I think your interview was spot on. There's a lot of students feel the same way, especially our female students on campus, right? They're concerned about reproductive rights and them being able to choose what they're going to do with their own body. And I think the young lady brought up a really, really good point about how Mr. Trump, if he does win, there's a lot of women who are afraid that they're not going to be able to have and keep those rights going forward. And I'm just a little curious, what do you think about that? Because no one's asked, you're doing the interview, but what do you think about that?
About reproductive rights? Well, honestly, because since reproductive rights is very important for this race specifically, because during this 4-year term that we've had, Roe v. Wade got overturned. So reproductive rights is a different issue than we've seen in the past presidential elections, because before it was something that people would just discuss, but now it's something that the Supreme Court overturned, and now states have more of control over that decision. So depending on who you have for president, if you wanted reproductive rights to be something that you want to take control as a person, if you have Kamala, you're fine. But if you have Trump, Trump has specifically mentioned that he does not want to legalize abortion. So it all depends on who's president and whether or not you voted for that person, because it is 9:05. The polls closed at 7, at least here in Texas. So the decision is now being counted up right now. So we have to wait for that.
And speaking of voting, voting is a really essential thing of Americans, right? Like, we have the right to vote. Patience actually did a little news story on that. Let's go see what Patience has to say about our voting.
Voting, which lasted from October 21st to November 1st. In Harris County, there are over 700 voting polls, and during the early elections, there were 87 locations available. UH was one of them, which increased the voter turnout. For students with a busy schedule, having a voting location on campus allows them access to vote. Daniel Robles, a member of Next Gen America, agreed that a campus with a voting location took less time than other locations.
Well, specifically for the U of H polling location, it is generally like one of the smallest ones in terms of the lines. So generally don't have to wait in line when you go to the U of H one because they keep things running really smooth.
Talking to students who voted in the Student Center, they explained why they believe it's important for those who didn't vote to vote in the upcoming elections.
Kind of like college students are the younger generation, so to say. So having a polling on campus that ensures that the younger generation, the upcoming generation, has their voice heard.
Like Josh said, it being we're a demographic, and what I think a lot of people don't realize is that it does impact us. It does impact our generation, the things that we're voting for. So having the opportunity and having access to it is, I mean, the most. I mean, definitely important to have a polling place on campus where kids can go and, make their voices heard, so that we can make the kind of, changes in our government that, we'd like to see for the next generation.
Patience, thank you very much for that. And voting is very, very crucial, and there's a lot at stake from immigration rights to women's rights to just in general. There's a lot of, I guess you could say, fear, right? That's coming out of this election, right? There's a lot of intimidation going on. And Daniela, Mr. Trump has a lot of, pretty much, you could say, a lot of control in the government. What do you think?
I'm not sure what to say about the control he has. He definitely has a lot of control, and there's so much to talk about in that sense. You have the fact that he's gotten all that control over senators, over the people. We saw that through January 6th specifically, how much of an impact that he has on voters in decisions of whether the election was stolen, whether it wasn't, in his opinion at the time. We've also seen several attempts of assassination from Trump towards Trump, so that's also a lot of people being scared of what Trump can do if he goes to become a president. But I think we still need to get more information, so I think we should go back to C-SPAN.
The press is calling the state of Delaware in the Senate race there for Lisa Blunt Rochester, the congresswoman. She will take over for Tom Carper, who is retiring after serving several terms in the U.S. Senate. They've also called a race in the Delaware House seat there. This one is an interesting one. Sarah McBride, the Democrat, with 85% of the vote in, is the winner of this Delaware seat. She's on track to become the first trans member of Congress. She spoke at the Democratic National Convention at age 25, published a memoir at 27, and won a Delaware State Senate seat at 30, and now she's making history again tonight. Peter?
And on our companion network, Book TV, Sarah McBride's memoir is featured. So if you go to booktv.org tomorrow or at some point, type in Sarah McBride up in the search engine, and you'll be able to watch her talk about her life. Bill is calling in from Brunswick, Ohio, supporter of President Trump. Right, Bill?
Yeah, hi. I think you've been hacked. I can't hear you guys.
Great. Appreciate that, Bill. All right. Diane in Mansfield, Ohio, can you hear me?
No, it's actually been breaking up since Greta a couple of times ago, right after the third time.
Great. Appreciate that. We will work on that issue as well.
Do I stay on the line or call back?
Just go ahead and stay on the line. I am going to put you on hold, though, because I don't want you to have to listen to all this.
That's cool.
All this going on here.
That's cool. I appreciate it.
All right.
Interesting you mentioned the Sarah McBride thing. My colleague Oriana Gonzalez did a very interesting interview with her as well that you can read at notice.org. Get some more information on that person. It's interesting night. This is one of those things where this is one of these historic wins that not long ago would have been very surprising, if almost unbelievable to see, but now this person is going to be in Congress in the middle of a world where we are really having a very vociferous debate in the country about trans rights. And now a trans person will be in Congress to talk about that with those other legislators, who are doing that. So it could be a very interesting, very interesting thing to keep an eye on.
All right, let's go to the callers. Now, we might not be able to interact like we usually do, but we want to hear what you have to say. Diane in Mansfield, Ohio, tell us what you want to say.
All right. Well, actually, it's kind of ironic. My daughter is trans, but that's not why I was calling. I'm only partially listening to results. I have you guys on, but on closed caption. But it's been so stressful and exhausting this last 2 years, I just can't take it. And I just am waiting to learn if Sherrod Brown won our state, which I'm hoping he will, but the prez won't be known for a few days. Bernie Moreno. You know, we used to be a swing state, but then we got gerrymandered out the wazoo, so now we're a red state. But gerrymandering is our issue one this time, and that's very important. But I want to tell people about Bernie Moreno. He's your typical ultra-rich guy from ultra-rich parents from Bogota, Colombia. They came to America at 5, and he became a citizen at 18. Easy Wikipedia research. Anyway, I'm actually watching A Day Without a Mexican, or Without Mexicans, on YouTube, which is not a typical streaming platform I use other than music. I'm so amused that this movie is over 20 years old, and they are still using the same boogeyman shtick they were 20 years ago to scare the heebie-jeebies out of those of you who only have one policy that you are voting on, which is immigration. And I don't know if anybody told you, but you guys were the ones that said you didn't want to approve it because of whatever reason, but we know what it was. Anyway, you just can't make this stuff up. And I'm just watching A Day Without a Mexican, and I thought I'd just call you and give you a movie read.
That's Diane in
Bye-bye.
Mansfield, Ohio. Greta Bronner, what do you have?
Another race. Let's look at the state of Colorado. The Associated Press has said that the vice president.
Welcome back. I have Mr. Daniel here in the studio. Daniel, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So we were before the cameras came on. We were talking about voting and the importance of voting, right? Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about why it's so important to vote?
Yeah. So I know for myself, young people and coming from a Latino background, we're the lowest propensity voters already in this country. So it's just really important to get that involvement, not only getting registered, but also going out to vote, getting your friends out to vote, getting your family out to vote. It's really, really important just so we can see the margins close in elections much faster.
Now, I think I'm going to call my age out a little bit. So growing up, you know, we didn't have all this social media and everything, right? So now with tip of our fingertips, right? We're able to just scroll and get all the information that we need. What's something that's important that everybody needs to know about just voting in general?
Yeah, so just knowing that you have a voice and that voting is more than just voting for a president as well. What's more important is voting for your local elections, because if you live in a county or an area that is not as big as like Harris County, your vote actually matters a lot more because your congressman might be decided by 500 people. Or as we saw like in the 2000 election, the margins in Florida were very, very close and did decide a presidential election. So that's why it's more important to become involved through social media and therefore get registered.
And you know, I think this presidential going around like the debate, we saw that both presidents were using a lot of different key points, right? Obviously from social media, from artists, music, just they were really trying to just grasp all those last minute voters, right? Have you seen that in the past, or is this something that they're, you know, taking more into a different stage?
Well, I would say I'm also very young, so I can't speak on what happened in the past in terms of like celebrities and social media, but they do use that as leverage to reach more people, because we all know that Beyonce is really popular. We all know that, you know, any certain celebrity will have a sway in young people's votes, and especially like sometimes older people. So it just depends, but it does have a greater effect, especially these days with social media being more accessible.
And I don't know if you just said that you were Latino, right? So a few weeks ago, you know, Donald Trump, I think about a month ago, Donald Trump had a rally out. And he brought out Nicky Jam, right? Nicky Jam, and he didn't even. It seemed like he didn't even know who Nicky Jam was. So him using that leverage and trying to get that last minute vote is important. So you talked a little bit about the importance of Harris County is big, right? And every vote counts. Talk to us about what a county ballot looks like. Like, what are they focusing on?
Yeah, so for county, you could vote from anything to county judge or like your local district congressman. It just depends, but those kind of things and those positions have way more of an effect on you, like what kind of taxes you're going to pay, if your roads get paved or not, or if they get fixed, that kind of thing. It just has more of a direct effect in the immediate side than a presidential side, which might take a couple years to have an effect on you.
And just to kind of finish this up, I was before we walked past each other, right? We were talking to also some students at the hallway, and they were just talking about how important this election is for them now, because growing up, like, that really didn't matter, right? Now that we're a little bit older, they're looking at certain key points that they're focusing on. You as a young voter, what is more important to you? Like, what are you focusing on? What matters to than you?
Yeah, so to me, just getting more people involved in general is always better. I find that talking to the most apathetic people is really fun, because trying to convince them that, hey, all of this stuff actually does matter, even though, yeah, when we were teenagers, maybe we didn't think about politics all that much, especially because in a Latino household, we don't really talk about that kind of stuff at all. So it's really nice to introduce that to the populace and let them know that, hey, it has an effect on you, and all these policies that people vote on does have an effect, even if you don't have a say in it.
Is there anything that we might have missed that you want to kind of touch on, or something that's important that you want everybody to know?
I just want to say that definitely we need more Latinos to get out there and vote. Even if you didn't this election, maybe you could do it next time, right? But just getting out there and showing everyone like what we stand for, what we believe in terms of like our culture and where we come from. So,
Daniel, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you coming in the studio.
Of course.
We have some more information coming from Cook TV, so let's take it away, y'all.
Younger voters are showing up at the polls in increasing numbers. From pressing issues like racial injustices and student loan debt, today's youth are determined to make their voices heard. So now, the question is, what's getting the younger generation to go out there and vote?
What motivated me to vote was the fact that this is my first year being legal, and also I think about all the people who came before me who fought really hard for Black people to have the opportunity to vote and have a voice in this country.
What really got me out to vote for this election cycle was just how hard both candidates campaigned this go round, and I've been exercising my right to vote since I was 18, and Kamala has really stood out to me as a great candidate just because of all of the things she's done on social media and in pop culture. Like just a few nights ago, she was on Saturday Night Live, which is one of my favorite shows that I watch with my mom. So I feel like these candidates are very relatable this go around, which sounds a little weird, but yeah.
Student loan debt is a very big problem that many has finally started to come to the front lines of, or at least reports of political figures, not just talking about it as nabbing a vote, but actually solving it after about 10 years of pushing, as college loans and the debt crisis have gotten completely out of hand over the last 10 years. So economics is a very big thing.
Priscilla, thank you. Now there's more information coming our way from C-SPAN, and we want you to take a look at it. Check this out.
Along with Nevada, which also has a Senate race going on there. Let's hear from Bill in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, here in the suburbs of Washington. Bill, why did you call in? Tell us.
You know, I thank you for taking my call, number one. I voted for Trump. I'm a farmer. And I voted for Trump because of economics. My chemical prices have went from $12,000 to $43,000 over the last 3 years. The same amount. Politically, I voted for Trump because there's 17 kids on my street in different houses, and all of them have been taken out of school and being homeschooled or sent to private schools. I don't know what Kamala Harris or what the Democratic Party is really thinking, but I think if they really ask farmers, they're about to put us all out of business. Thank you for taking my call.
That's Bill in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, inflation and education.
And that rural vote that we're talking about, which is a place where early on, you know, again, we're waiting for all the results to come in, but early on we are seeing Trump really overperforming his previous numbers in those rural areas. That's that rural-urban divide that's really defined a lot of politics right now. This is not a surprising thing to hear from a farmer, that they are very passionately supporting Trump.
Greta Bronner.
As we've talked about tonight, the Senate is on the line with the balance of power there. Democrats have a 2-seat majority. They did not have a favorable map this time around. They had to defend 23 seats while Republicans were only defending 11. Let's take a look at some of those competitive races, starting with Ohio. Democrat Sherrod Brown, the incumbent, trailing right now behind Republican Bernie Moreno, 76% of the vote in. Now, this state has been called for President Trump, a red state, and the incumbent Sherrod Brown trailing there. He's seeking a 4th term in the Senate. Moving on to Pennsylvania, look at the race right now. It's tied up between Dave McCormick and Bob Casey. With 15 days to go, this race changed from toss-up to lean Democrat, but you can see how competitive it is in Pennsylvania. Just 0.3 percentage points dividing these two tonight with 52% of the vote in. So we're going to keep our eye on that one as well. Moving on to Michigan, and this is the open seat left open by the retirement of Senator Debbie Stabenow. Alyssa Slotkin, the congresswoman running against the former congressman Mike Rogers, 20% of the vote in, and this is where it stands right now. Texas, this is a race where Democrats were hoping maybe they could pick off Republican Senator Ted Cruz and help them keep the majority in the Senate. 68% of the vote in, and right now Ted Cruz is in the lead over the congressman and former NFL star Colin Allred, the Democratic the Democratic congressman there. And then finally in the state of Wisconsin, this one too close to call, and it might stay that way for a very long time. 48% of the vote in, and you can say it's nearly tied there in the state of Wisconsin. A lot of money being poured in to these close Senate races. Take a look at Open Secrets data. These are the most expensive Senate races. The money spent by the candidates and outside groups in the state of Ohio totaling $427 million. In Pennsylvania, $287 million. In Montana, that Senate race that we're watching with John Tester, the incumbent, $270 million there. Texas, over $200 million spent on that Texas Senate race. And then in Michigan.
Well, thank you, C-SPAN, for giving us the information that we need for now, but it's still not over. We'll have more after the break.
Good. Going first, Jim.
What is the intro?
Here are the key points between former.
Welcome back to Valenti Cook TV coverage of the decision 2024. We're on the last few hours of our newscast, but not for this election. Hours are going to keep going, and the votes are still going to keep counting until we get to 270.
Good evening, I'm Enrique Munoz.
And we have a package. No, actually, we still have an interview back at Cook TV. So let's go back to Cook TV.
she kept going on for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hard. My time was cutting out. All right. Now we're here with Ava. I'm interviewing her from the watch party of the presidential debate. And I'm going to ask her some questions on how she thinks this presidential election is going to affect the nation and how it's going to affect Democratic supporters and Republican supporters. All right, Ava, so I'm going to ask you, how do you think social media affects this presidential campaign, this election for 2024?
I think that with social media, it definitely brought in a lot of new voters and allowed new voters to see their candidates in a different light versus seeing them on the TV screen, and they got to see them in things like TikTok, Instagram, and it really let them explore options.
Exactly. And also I wanted to ask, are you a first-time voter, or are you?
Yes, I'm a first-time voter.
You're a first-time voter. Oh, congratulations! That is a milestone, for sure. So I'm going to ask you, how do you think, as a first-time voter, were you excited to put your vote out there and let your voice be heard, or were you anxious, or how were you feeling?
I was definitely anxious, but I think the anxiousness came out of a place of anticipation and like kind of excitement that I was able to actually like play a part in society.
In society, of course. Yeah. And lastly, how do debates and media coverage affect this election this year?
I think it definitely affected how people saw the candidates. And like with the debates, that definitely was a highlight of who people wanted to elect. They saw a very different version than they probably expected. And then that also changed a lot of what we saw later on in the race. And so I think that the debates played a crucial part and were very enlightening.
Yeah. And what would you say to the next generation that's now voting, and in our generation?
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Don't be afraid to go out and vote. Like, it's definitely something that is so important. Make sure that your voice is heard, and even if your family believes in something different than you, still go out and vote. Even if like you feel like you're betraying your family in a way, like still believe in what you believe.
For sure. Well, thank you, Ava. This is all we have for today with Ava, and we're gonna cut right back.
Watch party, can you hear me? Having technical difficulties? No? We're having some technical difficulties.
Like the will of the majority. So in the case of abortion, if the majority of Floridians approve or support of access to reproductive rights, it just still feels like this could be denied, and it's frustrating to see that come up, especially given just everything that's been going on with our state. It just seems even if we do speak and share our voice, it takes 60%. So like I said, the supermajority to get anything across. And it's been very frustrating being a Floridian and also voting blue.
Thank you, Taylor, for calling in. Yeah, Greta showed us those polls or the results a little bit earlier. It was at 57%, I believe.
Yeah.
And you need a 60% margin to make that happen. But this, again, was a state that is voting for President Trump, Rick Scott, and 57% for pro-choice amendments.
That's right. And I think the lesson from that is that actually, and I think that we'll see how this gets discussed in the coming days, but I think it's dangerous to look at this as like, oh, the first time these abortion rights issues have sort of gone the Republicans' way in a while. Like, maybe something different is happening. If you're a Republican looking at those numbers, you're like, this is not a great, this is not a great thing. 57% of the electorate, people who turned out to vote for me, also voted for this amendment. I mean, giving numbers like that. 60% is a tough margin. I'm not completely sure of what the intricacies of Florida's choices with having a 60% margin on a ballot initiative is, but you can understand why somebody who would be frustrated that they won 57% of the vote and it doesn't count, right? That you can understand why that would be tough. But it also is that thing that it still shows that this issue is a very potent one, because even in a state where Republicans are having a very good night on this issue, they are still only 3 points away from being, from not succeeding in this thing. There are a lot of people in Florida who would like to see things different when it comes to this issue who also are voting Republican. And the question, this is a question for the future for those Republicans there. Can they keep them around? Is this going to be a problem for them? But that's a very interesting result because of that. It really just speaks to how potent this issue has been in politics since that Dobbs decision.
We are a half hour away from more polls closing, and that will be Montana, Nevada, and Utah. They close at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Next call is Alexis in New York City. Hi.
Hey, good evening.
Alexis, if you could tell us why you called in, we'd appreciate it.
But of course, I've been keeping up with C-SPAN since I was back in high school, and now I'm 33 years old, and I've always voted for Democrat. And so this time around, I decided to go the other way around, and I voted for Donald Trump.
And why was that?
I honestly feel like our country needs a change in direction of, the leadership and the things that we should focus on. I feel like Donald Trump has a great backing, good supporters that have some things that are fundamentally wrong with our country, and I think that they can fix it.
Alexis, where in the city do you live? What borough?
I live downtown Manhattan in the East Village.
And what about your congressman? Did you vote for a Democratic congressman or a Republican candidate?
I did.
You voted for the Republican?
No, excuse me. I voted for the Democrat.
You did, but just at the top of the ticket, you changed your vote. What do you do in Manhattan, Alexis?
Well, I work in construction. I build homes.
Good. Alexis, thanks for calling in. We appreciate your watching, and we appreciate the fact that you have kept up with us since you were 18 years old, especially. So thanks for that. Greta Bronner.
An update on the Keystone State, beginning with the presidential contest. Here's where it stands right now. 55% of the vote in, and you can see that Donald Trump is leading.
Hi, welcome back. Now, we were just talking about how the states that are normally red are turning red, and the states that are normally blue are turning blue. And I don't think people understand what's in stake here right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we were just talking about campus, like how many different types of organizations that are going to be impacted, from women's rights to LGBTQ rights. It's just a lot that's in stake, Daniela. I know you were getting just some numbers put together just now. Share with us what you found out.
Before we get to the numbers, I do want to talk about specifically, depending on who you vote for, what those rights are going to entail for different people. Specifically, we can tell that already with Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who is a Republican. We've already seen that he's implemented laws that have taken away the opportunity for minorities to, on campus specifically, be able to have organizations that specifically help Hispanics or the African American communities and all those kind of minorities that really want to have a space for themselves in the United States and in their campus, where they are talking to people every day. They're going with their teachers and all that kind of stuff. And so we have to remember specifically that depending on who you voted for, now that the polls are closed, who you voted for will depend on whether you will have rights to abortion, whether you're going to have the right to marry who you want to, if you can be a homosexual couple, and whether you can adopt a baby or not. So we have to make sure specifically, everyone's made the decision by now, but the votes are coming in. But another thing to add as well is that right now the Electoral College is 198 for Trump and Kamala is 112. The number is going higher for Kamala. It's still a huge difference between these two candidates, but like we've mentioned, the count goes from one side of the nation to the other. And so we start from Republican side to the Democrat. So now we've seen that Kamala Harris is getting more votes now because we're reaching that side of the nation where more Democrats are voting. So Kamala is going up in the race, but we still have time. We still have time to figure out whether Kamala is going to win or Trump is going to win. But like we've mentioned before, it's still up to counting.
Right, and like you mentioned, it all depends on the swing states, right? And they still haven't turned any color just yet, and we're getting the information as soon as it comes. We'll give it to you guys as well live and ready to roll. But you mentioned something super important just now. You talked about voting, right? Everybody's already voted by now. Polls are closing all over the nation. And if you voted, you voted. If you didn't, you didn't. And we were just talking here in the studio, and we had one of our team members in here that didn't vote, right? And we were just talking about how important it is to be able to have your voice heard. And we have different types of resources on campus and in your local courthouses in your city that will help you and help you register to vote and guide you through the steps, because it was a lot easier this year or this election versus what we went through COVID. Because you guys remember back in COVID, we didn't even find out who was president until about 4 days later. So hopefully we have an answer today. We have some information coming your way. But as soon as we get more info, we'll let you guys know. So
exactly.
Right. So right now, I think we're going back to C-SPAN, if I'm not mistaken.
We're going to
okay.
Coop TV.
I'm sorry,
yes,
my bad.
With SGA president. So
SGA
let's
president.
go to Coop TV.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with Diego, president of SGA. I'm going to be asking for his insight into young voter turnout, social media presence in the campaigns, and first-time voters. Thank you for joining us, Diego.
Great to be here.
How do you feel about the election results rolling in so far?
You know, the election results coming in right now, it's a bit slow. I know a lot of students are a bit stressed, but I think it's, quite characteristic that, Republican votes tend to come in a bit quicker than Democratic votes. So I still think this will be a very close election. For the time being, there is a big split, but I think as the night goes on, they'll get a bit closer. Is
it still really early?
I still think it's early. A lot of the swing states are still coming in. Swing states have been very crucial in all of this. I mean, in my office, we've been looking at everything, all the polls and everything coming in, and even the swing states are still very hard to determine.
How do you feel about young voter turnout so far in this election?
I think it's been higher than in most years. I mean, even this year, SGA registered almost 2,500 students just on our campus. And across the Big 12, I mean, that's been a big thing as well, there's been so much more students wanting to come out and vote. And I think the young voters is going to be a huge, it's going to be a huge turn for this election and maybe even the future elections.
Yes, first-time voters are so important in this election. What is social media's influence in this election and in campaigning? I
think social media has been quite crucial. It's, a lot of people are starting to realize that both candidates have been on podcasts, prevalent podcasts, mostly among young voters. And I think that's where both candidates have been trying to reach out to young voters, is through social media, because, I mean, most people in our generation are going to be on social media. So if they want to reach the young voters, which have been very crucial and very big during this time, they're going to have to do it through social media.
Especially in this day and age, social media is so important for these voters. Lastly, in your opinion, how influential has the swing states been in this election?
Very. I think most people, most of the eyes are on the swing states. However, there's also been states that have been known to be, blue or red that have even become very close. Texas one being one of them. As it looks right now, it's still very close. So, even going into the swing states are even closer. So I think the swing states, as those votes start to come in more, we're going to see, states that have been blue or red in the past flip. We're going to see, swing states that 4 years ago were red be blue, or blue states that are red now. So, I think all the eyes are on the swing states right now.
Yes, anything could happen. It is election night. The stakes are higher than ever. That is all we have with Diego here. Thank you for joining me.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Diego and Amy for that interview, very insightful. But we're going to go back to C-SPAN to get more information on this electoral race.
An important county, Bucks County. That's an important voter you just heard from there. That's the kind of voter that Harris wants to hear from. Bucks County is one of those ones where it's like, Bucks County, tell me everything. And that is so that's very important to get that information. That's very interesting to hear him say that.
Greta Bronner, what do you have for us?
Another look at the battleground states. We'll begin with Michigan. Want to check in on this and see where the race is at. 29% of the vote in, 49.3% for the former president, while the vice president trails him ever so slightly at 48.9% of the vote. Moving on to Wisconsin in the Badger State. And you can see here in Wisconsin that 54% of the vote is in, and Donald Trump is also ahead there slightly in Wisconsin. In Pennsylvania, as we said, this is the most crucial of all the battleground states. 58% of the vote in, and the former president is leading there as well. We will see as the bigger counties start to report around Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania if he can hold on to that lead. Let's go to the Tar Heel state of North Carolina and check in on that. 74%, 84% of the vote in so far, and the former president is leading there too. He won North Carolina in previous election cycles. Let's go to Georgia, the Peach State. 16 electoral votes here. And right now, 51.2% for Donald Trump, 48.1% for Kamala Harris. 88% of the vote is in. Here is Greg Bluestein, who reports for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, reporting Fulton County started to be tabulated around 8 o'clock, Georgia's most populous county. And Biden won 73% of Fulton's vote in 2020. Harris, he said then, is on a similar track with half the county's precincts reporting. That was earlier tonight from Greg Bluestein. Back to the battleground states, and let's go to Arizona. The polls closing there recently, 50% of the vote in, and look at that. It's a dead heat in Arizona. Peter?
Evan McMorris Santoro is with Notice. He's a reporter with News of the United States, Notice. Greta was talking about Michigan. So I went to cspan.org/results, pulled up the map, clicked on Michigan, and went county by county. And you look at this, and you can see that Oakland County, which is a big county, 63% of the votes are in, 53-44 Kamala Harris. But 1% from Wayne County has been counted. And that's Detroit.
That's the vote basket. That's where they get them from.
And that will go to Kamala Harris.
Also, people in the state told me, I spent a lot of time in the state this year, and people, Grand Rapids is what, that Kent County is what they're really interested in out there.
Kent is currently 31%. Kamala Harris, 64%. Donald Trump, 33%.
Interesting. I mean,
and that's Gerald Ford's old stomping ground.
That's right. That's where the Gerald Ford Museum is, actually. Yeah. I've stopped by there several times, and I suggest everybody who goes to Grand Rapids do it. It's a very interesting museum. The interesting thing about Grand Rapids is it's a traditional place that Trump ends his campaigns. He had his last rally there last night. He had his last rally there in 2020, and I was there when he had his last rally in 2016. And this was a night when people thought that it was, the conventionalism, the smart money was that this was a really silly idea that this guy is going to Grand Rapids, Michigan on his last, campaign stop of the night. And of course he came out and he won Michigan. So I mean, this is like a very important, that state's so important. Again, we're waiting for so many numbers to come in. You mentioned Wayne County not being in yet. That could change a lot of dynamics, but just looking at Michigan, we're looking at Michigan, I got a little deja vu there thinking about that.
The next call is Roy in Pineland, Texas. Roy, what's on your mind this evening?
How's it going? I'm a lifelong Democrat. My dad was retired right before 9/11 and called back into active duty service when 9/11 happened. We moved to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and he was the type that flew an upside-down flag on his bumper when I was, during the Iraq War invasion and stuff. Very unpopular, walked the cat on a leash. Anyways, so lifelong Democrat. So my most recent votes have been Obama 2012, Bernie in the Democratic primary, and Joe
Biden?
No. What's her name? Sorry, Hillary Clinton, then Trump, and then Trump again. So 2024, I voted for Trump, and Yeah, I never thought I would be a Trump-trained person until we got here. I really think that Kamala Harris just is a pawn of the war machine, just kind of a mindless person that's willing to toe the line for the military-industrial complex. I really fear for the future of our country if she continues on.
Welcome back. We're live in the studio at Valenti School of Communication and Cook TV. Now, a lot of people don't understand that this election is just not for the presidential election. There's a lot going on, right? The House is also up for grabs, and we're having those numbers right now updated, Daniela, and you were over there jotting down like everything. Like, so if you want to go for the first part, go for it.
Yes. So for right now, at the moment, we've seen that the House is now becoming, it's a Republican House right now. But we still have, I think, around 207 people left for votes. So there's still time for it to become a Democratic House of Representatives instead of a Republican House of Representatives. But on the Senate side, we have 48 Republicans and 37 Democrats. And then I believe we still have 15 more seats to fill, or 15 more candidates that still need to be decided as to whether or not they have won a seat in the House or not. So right now, it looks like the Senate and the House are both Republican. And we've also noticed that Ted Cruz is still leading. So we have the Senate Republican, we have the House Republican. Our senator for Texas is possibly going to be Republican, and Trump is at 210.
And I was going to bring that up right now. So 41% of the Electoral College votes have been counted so far. 210 has gone to former President Donald J. Trump, with 112 votes for Vice President Kamala Harris. So there's still votes coming in. They're still counting. It all depends on those swing states. Those swing states are going to let us know who the next president is going to be. Is it going to be former President Donald J. Trump, or is it going to be Vice President Kamala Harris? Yes. Now, earlier, we were talking when you were doing your producing thing. We were out on the student center, and there was watch parties everywhere. So thank you guys for watching. But we're going to go live back to Cook TV because they're having an interview about a watch party. What do you guys got?
Watch party. I'm going to be asking her for her opinion and outlook on how the election is going along, also young voter turnout and social media effects in the campaign so far. How are you doing, Madison?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. First of all, I want to ask you, how do you feel about watching the poll results roll in?
I'm very nervous. It's making me very anxious, but I think things are going to change. This is so early, and a lot of the states have not been counted yet.
In your opinion, how do you feel about young voter turnout during this election?
I think young voter turnout will be what decides this election. And a lot of the swing states, and even like the staunchly red and staunchly blue states, what's making the voter count take so long is the amount of young people that are in line, are staying in line, and have been in line for hours. And I think that's what will be decided this election.
So you're still waiting for the votes to roll in still for it to be official. What is social media's influence in campaigning in this day and age? I know it's so different from past elections.
I think social media has several effects. I think it humanizes candidates to people. For example, like with Kamala's campaign, with the whole Kamala is brat thing, or Kamala, coconut tree stuff, it makes her seem a lot more human, which makes her appeal to a lot more voters. It has encouraged more people to get out and vote, slightly due to shame. And also, what some people may see as negative, some social medias are pushing certain narratives. Like on TikTok and Instagram, you see a lot more Kamala-focused things. But if you go on Twitter right now, no matter what your political affiliation is, you see a lot of pro-Trump ads. It's right on the For You page for it.
Yes, Kamala's campaign is definitely catering towards Gen Z. Lastly, what is your opinion on how influential swing states are?
I think the swing states will be very, very, very influential. Even though in a lot of swing states it looks like Trump is winning right now, a lot of the counties, the bigger counties that tend to be more Democratic, only 16 to 20% of the vote has been counted, and they're taking a lot longer. And I think that has a lot to do with, like I said earlier, young voter turnout. And the swing states will be what decides who wins. Like, for example, if Kamala can win Iowa, then that would pretty much secure her win. If she can win Wisconsin, that would secure her win. I think Virginia's up in the air, but she could win North Carolina as well. So I think those states will be what gets her to 270. Yeah.
These swing states are so crucial, as you said. That's all we have here with Madison. Thank you so much for being here with me. Remember, there's 270 electoral votes to get the results of the next president. Back to you, Daniela.
Amy, thank you. Now, you know, there's a lot going on with this election, right? There's foreign policy, there's rights that could potentially be taken away. There is just a lot to talk about, and we just kind of want to rewind a little bit about how this campaign both parties have gone through, right? I know that Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald J. Trump really fought hard to grab those last-minute voters throughout the nation, Daniela. And we're seeing some of those results coming in.
Yes. For specifically with, I know I was looking at CNN and ABC this morning, and they were specifically mentioning that Kamala Harris was talking a lot to male voters. And Trump didn't get those male voters until I believe he went on the Joe Rogan podcast, and I feel like that's a little too late. But like we're seeing, Trump has 210 electoral votes, so maybe he did get those male votes that he wanted at the end of the day. And I don't know what happened to Kamala.
Well, I'll tell you, I think, Vice President Kamala Harris really focused on also the minority, right? Mm-hmm. Going after those young voters. I know that I saw one of her live streams where she's calling out Gen Z, right? Gen Z is an up-and-coming generation where their future is really being decided right now as we speak. And they're really talking, and she was really going after by just, that she focused a lot, I believe, in getting those people that are going to be able to reach to those younger audiences, like Taylor Swift, Beyonce. Cardi B was in one of her rallies, and I don't know if you guys saw Cardi B, you know, I think her teleprompter went out, and she was reading off her phone, and, you know, Elon Musk goes on X, or formerly Twitter, and really blasts her, right, saying that she was, quote, a puppet, also being fed the information that she needs to say. So it's just so much going on with this race, and there's still so many votes to be counted, and it's going to be hopefully something soon, but those swing states are really going to be the ones that are going to really tell us who the next president's going to be.
Yeah, I also want to talk about specifically the watch parties, or where the presidents, the presidential candidates are currently at this moment. From what I know, Kamala Harris is at Howard University, her alma mater, with her sorority sisters, seeing how this is all panning out in general. But Donald Trump is currently, I believe, at one of his clubhouses in Florida. He's not at the watch party with all the other Republicans. And supposedly the Republican Party watch party that's happening in Florida is waiting to see if Trump will visit them and have a little speech with them if possible. But if not, he's going to stay at the clubhouse. He's just waiting. He's just surrounded by his family right now, and
just waiting for
I don't
results.
know what that means, but
but like we mentioned earlier, the presidential election is not what's at stake as well. You know, the House is also up for grabs. And also earlier today, Puerto Rico is also going through elections. So if you guys don't understand, Puerto Rico is a big key as well for this presidential election. I know we talked about it earlier. We talked about how the comedian, you know, blasted the Puerto Rico and calling them an island of trash. Then going forward today, their elections are going on, and you're just seeing all these people just really taking on the voting right. And I think Bad Bunny was in line just like the regular citizens and doing their vote, casting his vote just like everybody else in Puerto Rico. So there's a lot going on. Swing states again are what's going to call out the next president of the United
I
States.
do want to clarify, though. I might be wrong, but I don't think Puerto Rico, since it's a territory, is allowed to vote for president. So they're voting for governor right now.
Government, yeah,
they
that's
can't vote for presidential
no, they cannot.
elections.
They're just they're a U.S. territory, but they are going through their elections, which is they're choosing their new governor, and a lot of focus has been on Puerto Rico as well because I know that. They're going for removing the person who's in seat right now because they're just saying that they're not doing much for that territory right now. So it's different. It's different, but
it definitely is.
We're gonna continue keeping you guys updated throughout Kook TV and also UH.com and UH News. But thank you guys so much for watching these long 4 hours of this extensive coverage that we gave for you guys. Thanks again, and I'm Ricky Munoz.
And I'm Daniela Palau.
And thank you to Valenti School of Communication for partnering with us. Just thank you guys for watching.
Yes.
Good night.
Good night.
To all the different minority communities in that area, from the sizable Korean population to the sizable Vietnamese population. And it's been really effective, so much so that Michelle Steele, in a local news interview, went on to defend that who's immigrated from Korea, is actually more representative of the Vietnamese people living in the district than Derek Tran. So it's one that a lot of multiculturalism is really playing into this this contest here. And in fact, it actually appeared on our 20 races of House races most likely to flip for the first time because House Republicans are getting increasingly worried about her ability to hold on to that seat.
Kirk Beto, we appreciate, as always, your time and your analysis. Evan McMorris Santoro, what do you want to add to what Kirk had to say?
Amazing. I love everything Kirk says. He's great. No, but he's talking about this idea that we're seeing this national numbers, which we were talking about before, about the underperformance of Harris in places that they needed it, or overperformance of Trump in places that some folks we're not expecting it, but that the Republicans needed it. These numbers seem to be sort of circling that direction, right? We're still waiting for all these results to come in, but it is not, the trends are not suggesting that the Democrats pulled off what was really, if you think about it, one of the more wild presidential attempts that have been made, right? You had an incumbent president who was very unpopular, who had that very rough debate in June, which we've never had before, then replaced very rapidly by a vice president who came in and had a very short campaign season. She sort of had to both sell herself, she had to introduce herself and sell herself, right? The night's not over yet. We don't know how that's going to end up. But the fact that that may not have been as successful as people in the Democratic Party were hoping, when you kind of unpack it and think about just